All right, King Killers, we're covering chapters 20 through 21 of The Way of Kings in this episode. We're back with a couple Kaladin chapters. We see a flashback where a young Kal tries to save a little girl's life but fails. And then back at the war camp, he tries to figure out a way to save his wounded Bridge 4 mates. Then we also discuss more on Sanderson's Kickstarter, Tim's new trampoline, and why Amaram deserves a lot of credit. So sit back and enjoy.
I got a scope zoomed in on the sniper in the trees. I'ma surround if the devil wanna flee. I got a scope zoomed in on the sniper in the trees.
All right, welcome back to the King Killer Podcast. I'm Dan. Got with me Tim. What's going on?
I'm here. Hello. Yes.
Seeing looking like this is going to be the month of Brandon Sanderson. He's rocketing up the charts of the old Kickstarter. It's up to now 35 million and the number 2 most backed Kickstarter of all time. Just like did a spot on CBS where they were interviewing him about it. Like, dude's just blowing up.
It's so great. It kind of brings that question. It's like, why now? Like, why didn't somebody do this prior? You know? But whatever. I mean, it's fucking great. But yeah, it will change things moving forward for sure.
He did another Kickstarter previously that did really well, but not on this level. You know, with the way he promoted it, gave it a real big boost because of the amount of attention like people were putting towards the initial announcement, thinking that there was something wrong with him or that he was going to announce, cutting back on things. And then instead he announces he's, wrote 5 extra books and it's going to put out 4 of them next year. That generated a lot of buzz just on that. It, generated a lot of buzz. So it's kind of a perfect storm. I think it'd be tough to replicate what he's done. I think, someone like George Martin probably's got enough of a base where he could, if he had, some books like to drop like that, he could probably generate a significant amount of money off of Kickstarter. But not everybody's going to be able to replicate that. Kind of caught a perfect storm, and Andy's big. And Wheel of Time just came out, so it's kind of a perfect storm of events for him.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, though, like even towards television, movies, adaptations, like just a lot of different ways that, appealing to your fan base directly is the main thing I see that can really change. Just seeing the results of what he was able to do, with people being able to connect directly to their fan base instead of having to go through a publisher, or depending on some other party to advertise for you, to generate interest. If you can just do it directly, virtually yourself, it's awesome, man.
Well, you get the sense like from the guy when he does his little streams where he talks about spoilers and talks about his books. He likes to nerd out on his books and he's enthusiastic while he's doing it. He has fun with it. It's, it's clear he enjoys talking about his books and the world that he's creating. It's not something where, he wants to put something out and then just kind of move on to something else. Like it's clear that he really loves what he's doing. And so that's infectious. And it's hard to replicate that too, because you obviously, you're going to get some negative people no matter what, when you're of that size. And he, for whatever reason, is able to navigate that without, it having any kind of impact on him.
But I mean, is there anyone that's really churning out the amount of content he is?
No, that keeps a lot of the dogs off his back, is that he does put out so much content at a time when a lot of, you have 3 major series and, Martin, Rothfuss, and Scott Lynch with the Gentleman Bastards. Like, you got 3 extremely popular series that have 7 to 11 year droughts without a new book. So without a new book in the main series, obviously Martin and Rothfuss have put out books in between, but not in the main series. So with the amount of content that Sanderson's putting out, that gives him a lot of, he's benefiting from the fact that some of his contemporaries are slower writers than him. I mean, to me, I don't care about that kind of stuff. I mean, whatever your process is, I only care about the finished product. If the book you put out is shit, I don't care if it took 1 year or 12 years to write. If it's shit, I don't want to read it. But if it's great, I don't care if you could put it out in 1 year, great. If it takes you 11 years to put out a great book, then take 11 years, whatever you need. I just want the great book.
I want it to take the exact amount of time it needs to take for it to be as good.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
For Rothfuss's books, Martin's book, I want them to take exactly as long as they take. But that said, with Sanderson, it's constant.
Yeah, right? he's an anomaly because he's putting out great content at a unbelievable pace. Like the pace is absurd. The rate of the amount of material and the work ethic and the amount of time he puts into his craft, it's extremely impressive. I don't quite understand how he does it, and and that's why I don't compare him against other people, because I don't even understand how he does it himself, much less would I think other people should emulate that. I don't even know how you would.
I hesitate to even compare them to one another anyway, because vastly different. Genre 100%. Is close, but they're so different. They're so different in terms of, it's not just quality. I mean, I think the quality's there with all three, but the quality is so different with Martin Rothfuss. It seems to be there's a closer alliance, perhaps. But maybe I'm saying that because I haven't read nearly as much Sanderson. So,
Rothfuss and Martin are more. They're vastly different, but I guess they're more similar than Sanderson. Sanderson mirrors other people I've read, Sanderson's unique too. I mean, they're all they
are. That's the thing about
everybody I read. They're
anyway.
not. They're not very. It's tough to compare different authors. They're not all that similar.
Of any medium, there's more room for difference than any other medium that exists. I don't give a shit. When it comes to music or film or any of it, you can distinct yourself in particular ways. But with literature, it's so vast. It's so vast. The opportunity is vastly larger for difference.
What separates them all is the reason they all stand out, and to Abercrombie and Robin Hobb and Scott Lynch, all these people. The reason a lot of these people stand out is it's not one specific thing. It's they're really good at different things, but they all have something that they're at least really good at, that they're top of the line, top tier, better than other people at. Martin, it's unreal how well he's able to write dialogue. I could just listen to his characters talk to each other. I could just read that fucking all day. I don't care about the plot. Just have him sit two characters in a room and then have them banter back and forth. And I can read that shit all day long. And that's one of the hardest things to write is dialogue, to make it realistic and in a conversation you actually want to hear. Most people, there's a reason people are like, let's get the fucking plot going. Let's move forward the plot. And they want the fucking action sequences. But I like to live in that dialogue, and he's a master at that. And
the evolution of his characters, man. The evolutions of his characters is incredible. Think about Jamie or any of them, Tyrion. I mean, the evolution of the characters within the character throughout the novels is stupendous.
Yeah. Robin Hobb does a real good job with character development. Sanderson is really good at magic systems, fight scenes, crescendos. He's got and they're none of them are like weak on. It's not like they have some glaring weakness where they're just not good at something.
Mm-hmm.
It's just they excel at some things and then they're good at everything else. So
Yeah,
but they're
super
not all
stand
that
out
similar.
on certain things. Yeah. No, that's why when we were mentioning it, I'm like, well, you can't really compare these, which is hard to do. I mean, that's the way it should be with good authors. They should stand out in such a distinct way, and they all do.
It's
At
similar
least
to
the ones I've read.
art. I mean, there's a reason why people can look at a painting and someone who's into art, they can look at a painting
Mhm.
and be like, oh, that's so and so's work.
Or well, then they can look at other paintings that's derivative of someone else's work.
Yeah.
Everything can be derivative to some degree, right? Everybody's derivative of Gutenberg to some degree, but but I mean, when it comes to art in itself, I mean, some things are just like that. You're literally just trying to reintroduce the same thing. So
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of stuff is all built on other things. And you can go down that route of like when you compare stuff, you can go, oh, look, they have X, Y, Z in similarity. So he just ripped that idea from that person. It's basically the same book. But it's like, hold on. Once you go into the actual details and you start reading, they're not fucking the same thing at all. They have a few similarities, but they're not the same thing. What are you talking about? These are completely like there'll be people that compare Name of the Wind. They'll be like, oh, that's a ripoff of Ursula Le Guin, and it's like, no, it's not. Otherwise I would just be reading that fucking book all the time. Like,
well,
it's
it is an homage to the Lone Ranger and Tonto. Clearly.
Yeah, 100%. He homaged the shit out of a bunch of books, but and movies and TV shows, but it's not exactly the same. But yeah, there's a lot of differences. But it looks like this month is the month of Sanderson, and next year is going to be the year of Sanderson, as he's coming out with about 7 novels next year.
Jeez, man.
And I guess 6 next year, 1 at the end of this year. So
that's pretty nuts, man.
That's an insane amount of production.
And these have all been written, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's got the revision process on, at least 4 of them, 5 of them. Stormlight, he's still got to. I think he's still writing Stormlight for next year. But yeah, that's so crazy. He's like, I got to put out Stormlight Archive book 5 at the end of next year, and he's just now starting it, and he's just gonna knock out 1,000-page book plus do the revisions on 5 other books. It's a crazy,
wild,
crazy work ethic, crazy amount of work he's putting in.
Well, I mean, he's got to have just a great process. Like his production process works tremendously. He has it down. I mean, whatever he's doing, it's working.
Yeah, he's a beast. He is a beast. I can't wait. I love the fact that he's crushing it and what he's doing now, but I cannot wait until they start pumping out TV shows and movies, and that guy just becomes just a complete titan. Definitely deserves it. But yeah, let's get an update on where you're at in the books, and then we'll jump into this.
So I haven't made a tremendous amount of progress from where I was probably prior, but kind of the main things. I mean, one of the things I just heard was Adolin basically like verbalizing how into Shallan he is, where he's actually asking Kaladin, so you got any experience with women? Like, no. And he's like, light-eyed women? Absolutely not. And then he's like, basically like, well, I know how to get him interested. I just don't know how to keep him. And this one I really want to keep. Like hearing something like that, you're like, shit. So he is like really into Shallan. So that was one. Kaladin sort of accepting Moash's plan to assassinate Elhokar. That's kind of where I just got to, where I guess I kind of saw it coming gradually, but I've been moving so slowly that it's like, man, I should have got here a lot quicker, But but getting that where it's like he's begrudgingly accepting it, like he really doesn't want to, but it's been basically a process of like just realization, like, oh shit, I think this kind of has to happen.
Yeah, the straw that broke the camel's back was, getting tossed in the clink. He did not like that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and then Syl was kind of I think she was pushing that line of resistance as well, where it's like, you're doing something wrong here, you're lying, I don't know, something. I can't
Breaking an
remember
oath.
exactly.
Like he
Yeah.
made an oath to protect Elhokar, and now he's making an oath to kill him. And
Yeah.
she's the honor sprint, so that would cause a problem because one way or another he's got to break an oath that he made, and that would be not honorable.
Yeah. Well, and then one of my favorite, like, most recent things I listened to is a small thing, but Adolin's trying to describe Kaladin's abilities, and he doesn't know what they are. So he's like, "Oh, you know the thing." He's like, "What thing?"
Yeah.
The thing with the stuff.
Yeah.
Like, that's actually what he
Yeah.
says. The thing, and then what thing? The thing with the stuff. Just
Yeah.
Kaladin's like,
He's
you have
just
no idea what the fuck
he's
you're
just
talking
reaching
about.
for something. He's like, he knows there's something up with him. He just doesn't know what it is. And so
It's so funny.
he's not sophisticated in his attempt to manipulate him into spilling the beans.
It's really funny having those moments where it's like when I turn it on, I'm not thinking I'm about to laugh at something, but then to laugh in these moments within the books, it catches me by surprise when I kind of see myself, sort of listening to it. But yeah, that one cracked me up. The thing with the stuff. Adolin's a funny guy. I like the character's very, very likable.
Yeah. Yeah, their mix is good. I like the mix with Kaladin's got a lot of good dynamics with different characters. His dynamic with Dalinar is interesting, where it's you got kind of a father figure, general type of guy with Kaladin, who's kind of halfway starting to trust him, but still's got a foot out of the water. So they got a kind of interesting dynamic, and it's also, considering how everybody else looks at Kaladin, it's interesting to see him with like a presence that overshadows him, shadows over top of him. Like Dalinar is like a bigger figure than Kaladin, and that's not Kaladin's normal dynamic with everybody else. Like usually people are either in awe of him or they definitely don't see themselves as above him.
It's also interesting.
Dalinar clearly hovers over him.
It's also very interesting for Kaladin to have that example of like, oh, this is what I was looking for the whole time. Like in a model soldier to model himself after. This is like what he's been looking for, and then to like actually be witness to it. But then, like we talked about, I think it was one of the recent episodes where Dalinar kind of just chooses to not believe Kaladin about Amaran, where it's like,
that fucking pulled back on shit with him. I mean, that deeply impacted Kaladin, because he's like just starting to trust Dalinar, and now he's throwing a wrench in that whole thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting position for everyone, because to not be believed, that's obviously problematic, but then also to have something presented to like that puts a big spoke in the wheel for Dalinar's plans and for what the structure he has.
Right? Yeah, and it's not a minor thing that he presented. He's like, this guy murdered all my fucking friends, and you're coming back to me and telling me like, maybe you're remembering it wrong. Remembering it wrong? Like, I remember him murdering my friends in front of me wrong? What are you talking about?
Yeah. Taking my shard plate and murdering a bunch of people, that I'm remembering wrong.
And like fucking coming at me, like getting your temper rising. Like, dude, I just told you this dude murdered all my friends, and then you're gonna jump down my throat and like telling me like basically to shut up and fucking do my job. Like, dude, go fuck yourself. I would, I can understand why that whole sequence of events flipped the switch for Kaladin, where he's like, oh, fuck these dudes. Fuck the light eyes. It's like,
he went back to right back to his old move,
where he's just already there, but and then just pushed him right back to it.
Yeah, he was going down that line of like, well, maybe there are some good ones. Maybe I can trust them. He's like, nope, they're all scumbags. So
Yeah,
he's
and
going
then
right back in that same direction.
you hear what happened to Moash, and you be like, yeah, I understand exactly why these guys are the way they are. Like with the shit that happened to him. Like if some dude was responsible for killing my grandparents, like yeah, there's no forgiving this.
No, yeah, yeah, and that's an interesting line that gets played along with Dalinar. Is like he's having to play this political balance that he's not really that adept at, you know, and he admits it. Like I should just be a soldier. I fucking do this shit. These hard decisions, I don't want to do them. And he still does a fairly good job, I would say. It seems. I mean, we don't really have other examples. I mean, necessarily to like pit against, but yeah, that's a real difficult.
He does.
One.
I mean, in most situations, he's open. He listens. Like even when Adolin fucking jumps his shit, he listens to him, and he thinks about what was said to him, contemplates it. He doesn't just dismiss it.
Yeah, and even later
handled the situation with Kaladin just horribly, though.
Well, and he even later, I remember instances with Adolin where he's like, "Thank God I have a son that's willing to tell me the hard truths." So even though he doesn't take his advice in certain situations, but he's still like, well, at least he's still telling me things that I need to hear versus, just because typically people just won't. They'll just take the easy route, man, and just not mention it. Maybe talk about you behind your back, and then or after the fact, they'll be like, "Yeah, I meant to say something, but you were kind of, already going down that path, so I just thought, he'll figure it out."
Yeah, that stuff's it's an interesting dynamic, and I like the whole like you got Kaladin with Adolin, Dalinar's great, and then Kaladin with Moash or Teft or Rock. And I mean, there's just a lot of interesting Kaladin with Syl. Kaladin's like a great kind of fulcrum of just the way he kind of interacts with everybody. It just works really well for the books. His interactions with Shallan, I mean, there's obviously you don't get any in the first book, and you just get it a little bit in the second book, but their pairing together is great.
Yeah, you can. I mean, even without having too much yet, it's like it feels like gravitational pull. There's going to be a magnetic equation that's just going to pull them to one another.
Yeah,
because of, I mean, it just seems natural with just the circumstances of the books. I'm getting there, but so far it's good shit,
Yeah, you're right on the cusp of getting towards the big Sonder launch, whatever you want to, however you want to say it.
It's one of my favorite images. Love it. Sanderlanch? I think I prefer Sanderlanch.
Yeah, Sanderlanch sounds more like Avalanche, so yeah, that would be the better way to pronounce it. But yeah, so we are starting with chapter 20. And chapter 20 is titled Scarlet. And in this chapter, we have a young Kaladin trying to save a little girl's life who had fallen from a high distance and hurt herself very badly. He fails miserably, like a punk, lets her die, and then doesn't take it very well.
Yeah, that's not really how it goes down, but
it's basically how I read it.
It's perfect towards his character. I mean,
yeah,
this is exactly what should happen. Is he goes into his zone, does a great job, goes into his zone, but it makes no fucking difference.
Goes in way overconfident, and then when he fails, he takes it way too hard. Just he is Mr. Extreme of emotions.
He's very bipolar.
I'm gonna save her. I'm gonna save everybody in the bridge crew, even though we're
no one's
cannon fodder. Nobody's gonna die. I'm saving everybody. All of you guys, you're all counted. Mark it down. Fucking lock that shit up. It's a fucking Kaladin guarantee. None of you are dying. And then 8 of them die the next fucking run.
I love the idea of the Kaladin guarantee, that he just keeps doing this over and over again.
Yeah.
Where he puts on the Kaladin seal of approval.
Yeah.
And then the next chapter, he's just down in the fucking dumps because he let everyone down.
Everybody fears it. Like he goes and he like marks a check on your forehead. He's like, "You're saved, you're saved," and then it's like it's like a death sentence. You know you're dead within the next 10 minutes if he marks something on your head that he's saving you.
What was it for a while? The Madden curse. If you were on the front of the Madden box, you got injured before the season started.
The Kaladin guarantee curse. You're saved. Don't you worry, little girl. I got this. I got it. Like, it looks like I'm losing a lot of blood right now. I don't know. Like, no. I said I got this. Don't you worry.
Now you're making it sound so flippant. Now I'm picturing like the Elcar champagne in people's faces. He's like spraying blood everywhere. Like, nah, it's no big deal. This is no big deal.
Elcar would go in that confident, but he would leave just as confident somehow.
No matter what happened.
Out of the situation.
Still, like, patting everybody on the back. I did a great job, though, didn't I, guys?
Like, hey,
you see what I did?
She was going to die 5 seconds sooner without my help. I gave her an extra 5 seconds of life, which, that's almost like an infinite amount of life if you think about it. You just got to think about it in a certain way.
I definitely see him putting his arm around the dad and just being like, man, did you see how I pinched off that artery, though? I mean, that was really good shit.
Hey, look.
If it wasn't for that head injury, she'd be fine.
Yeah.
But, she's weak, feeble. She can't take a fall. I mean, it's probably your fault.
Clearly not my fault. Like, look at how I fucking notched all this shit together. Top-notch work. Like, high-five me. Sad, super sad about your daughter. Super sad. But at least, come on, give it to me a little bit. Like, I need a little bit of love for how awesome my work was.
Yeah, I can see that's definitely his MO.
At least the way we portray the character, that's his MO. The champagne popping, it's in the subtext. Clearly, it's there. It's just Sanderson doesn't make it explicit, so other people might not see him exactly how we see him, but it's because they're not seeing all the subtext that we're able to pick up that they're missing.
Since we're just going to push the silliness, I'll just go ahead and say he also checks, like, when she dies, a lot of people, they lose their bowels when they die. So he, like, looks down. He's like, Doug, where's Doug? Get him over here.
Doug, clean this mess up.
It's like, dude, my job is shard play. It's not shit anywhere. What'd I say? What'd I say? You're the best. You're the best, Doug. We can depend on you to clean this mess up.
Hey, like I always say, Doug, it's a shit job.
But you've got to do it, not somebody. You, because you're the one. You're the best.
So on this silly side of that, we end up getting a very serious chapter. Weirdly,
that compound fracture. Right?
Yeah. He's like, I can save her. Pulling off the shirt. The child was only 5. She'd fallen far. I can save her, he was mumbling. A crowd had gathered. It had been 2 months since Bright Lord Wistio's death. They still didn't have a replacement City Lord, and he'd barely seen Laurel at all in that time. So, like, they're pulling Laurel away from him, too. Starting to lay that groundwork that, like the servants were kind of keeping, that their relationship it was budding was inappropriate, according to her servants that were kind of taking over her charge, waiting for the City Lord to get there. And basically, they were just, maneuvering her to marriage into a marriage with a higher up, Light Eyes.
I don't know if I'm remembering this wrong, but if the last flashback we had of Cal, wasn't it when he first trained with the staff and then she took off? Like, I don't know.
That's the only interaction we've had with her at this point is when she maneuvers him into a fight.
Yeah. Well, and I thought the end of it, like, basically her handlers or whatever, the servants at her home were like beckoning her to come, like there was an emergency. And I was
her dad died.
Oh, so that's what this is the aftermath. This is like 3 months later.
Correct. Yeah. This is the last flashback was that her dad dying, him getting maneuvered into a fight, and then her dad dying, and then this is just kind of laying it down what's been going on since that moment.
Mm-hmm.
But and so Kaladin, he's 13, got a 5-year-old girl who's got a compound fracture and bleeding profusely and a head wound. And he's over there, I got this. I'm going to save her. And
You keep
so
saying
it's a
it
tough,
over and
tough
over.
situation. Really went in way too high in the hopes. I mean, obviously you want to be hopeful, but not when you're Kaladin. You should probably try to temper your hopes a little bit, considering how far you fall.
I mean, you kind of want, yeah. That's the that's the bipolar problem that we have here. But you certainly want your field surgeon to go in with this type of confidence, right?
Yeah.
And he zones it, like he almost has one of those moments like he has with the staff where it's like he just for a moment almost doesn't even know what he's doing. He's doing it automatically, like he's just going through his training and does a tremendous fucking job.
He
Well,
feels too much to be like a surgeon. Like you almost need to be more someone who doesn't go ride real high or real low. You need someone who's kind of even keel to be in one of those positions.
well,
Who's
someone that
not
can
going to panic,
remove,
but also
yeah,
is not going to be distraught when they fail, because you're going to
yeah.
fail in that. I mean, it's just people die, so there's
Well,
nothing
and the
you can
stakes
do
are
about it.
super high. I mean, you have to be able to like remove the emotion and compartmentalize and just like turn off that perspective.
And he does not have that. He goes
No.
to the extremes. He's way overconfident and falls really hard when he falls. But yeah, and
Yeah.
so like in her dad is coming up. What are you doing to my daughter? You Kremlin, you Storm's leavings. Don't touch Miss Maisel, whatever, Miasal. Don't. And he's like, he continues work. Then he sees like one of the rest of the group holds the dad back, and then he sees that he's got to cauterize the artery because he can't pinch it off. He's just kind of like pinching it with his hand, and then he's trying to sop up the blood. And then he calls for fire. He's like, "I need fire, hurry!" And someone give me your shirt. Several men rushed off as Cal elevated the leg. One of the men hurriedly handed over his shirt. Cal knew where to pinch to cut off the artery. The tourniquet slipped, but his fingers did not. He held the artery closed, pressing the shirt on the rest of the wound until Valama came back with a candle's flame. I mean, if you think about that, if you're 13 years old, now granted, I have heard that the years are longer on this planet, so 13 in their world is not 13 in our world, but the ages correspond. So they seem to age slower or something, because Tien does not seem like, a high school kid. He seems like a little kid. And Kaladin seems like a little middle school, grade school kid at this point. He doesn't seem like, an adult or a budding adult.
Yeah, he's definitely, well, I almost see him as like yeah, I don't know, like yeah, not necessarily, but kind of like a teenager, like because he's going through that like identity crisis sort of
Yeah, it seems like
situation where it's like
he just going through puberty,
15,
and so
16,
like yeah,
14.
he seems like a middle school kid. I mean, the way
Yeah.
he acts, and in the previous chapter, the previous flashback, the way he's acting, hanging out with Tien, he doesn't understand girls at all. Like to the like I don't remember. High school was not like that. Like that seems like a middle school kid. Like he's just so inexperienced, where the ages seem to correlate to our world, even if the years don't correlate, to our world.
Well, one of the things like in live time when he's at task here, he doesn't act like a kid. I mean, where well, one thing that you were talking about earlier, where he thinks I can save her. Her face was pale, and she didn't move. That head wound, maybe it. And then he tells himself, can't think about that. One of the lower leg arteries was severed, so then he just goes to focus on what he needs to do. And then he even goes as far as when he yells, "Fire! I need fire! Hurry!" and someone give me your shirt. That doesn't sound like a kid. That's someone who's in fucking charge. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, but I mean, this is a kid that this is what he does. I
Mhm.
mean, if were an apprentice from the time you were a little kid, you just grew up as a surgeon's apprentice. you're gonna, you're gonna be better prepared than other people. So it's
Well, yeah, yeah. I guess
you
what I'm
could,
saying is you can see the leadership abilities at this point, or his abilities to, well, excel in what he does. It's in everything he does, man. That's the
and
crazy thing about his personality being so flawed on the highs and lows. He excels at what he applies himself to, like
yeah,
to a super degree.
yeah, 100%. Like he seems to be efficient at what he does and like proficient at what he's been learning for a profession. Basically, it's his whole life. He definitely seems advanced at that, which makes sense though if you're an apprentice. It's where when you see him like playing with rocks, playing with the little splurgs or whatever they call those bugs, like are
Hmm.
those little things that make the cocoons and that kind of stuff. Like, and he's sitting there, you know, has no concept that Laurel is into him or anything like that. Where he seems like a middle school kid in most things, but yeah, he does seem to be have a handle on what he's an apprentice at. He seems proficient in that, which you would be. Like, I mean, if I'd grown
That's your
up
focus.
and
Yeah.
wasn't going to school and doing all that kind of shit, and I was just apprenticing for a job, I would have been proficient at that job. Like, been plenty old enough to be good at that. But yeah, I mean, when you think about that though, when you're like 13 and you gotta do something like this would be rough, man. It's a 5-year-old girl who's bleeding
He,
out in front of you, and you're holding her artery shut.
yeah.
Like, oh
And
man, yeah,
cauterizing the wound. I mean, it's fucking. That's pretty brutal, man. And like to be like the dad sitting there, his daughter's bleeding all over the place, and now you're gonna smell her flesh burning, scorching.
high amount of
Fucking brutal,
pressure.
man.
The pressure would be intense. I've had pressure on me. I don't think I've had quite like 5-year-old dying in my arms, and I'm performing surgery pressure on me though,
Well,
with her
what's
dad
what's
standing over me, ready to throttle me if I don't succeed.
yeah, and what's really the most upsetting is where what we were saying about Elikar earlier, and if he was in this situation, is he does it. When he was done, the bleeding had stopped. Sat back, smiling, and then he noticed that her head wound wasn't bleeding either. Her chest wasn't moving. So it didn't even matter. Didn't matter how good a job he did. She fucking
No,
died, and you're not going to get any credit for it. So, and that's the
no,
most upsetting thing. That's what he should have even done the same thing that we're talking about with Ellikar. Should have been like, all right, look, dude, I know you're upset, but I mean, I fucking. Did you see what I
yeah.
just did? I mean,
Like, look at
give me
that
some credit.
workless spot. I mean, his dad,
Well, his dad does give
Kaladin's
it to him,
dad
yeah.
gives it to him, but Kaladin
Which is,
doesn't take it all that
yeah, I was
well.
gonna say his reaction is, I don't want to be a surgeon.
Yeah, but yeah, and so no, Harl felt his knees. No, do something. Cal said he'd stop the bleeding. He'd lost her. He found himself shaking again as Harl clutched the corpse. That's a brutal sentence by
Yeah.
Sanderson. He found himself like Harl comes up, pushes him away, then grabs his daughter, and he's like he found himself shaking again as Harl clutched the corpse. He's already calling it a corpse,
Yeah, it's
calling her
brutal.
a corpse like right after the death, like just the putting a stamp on the fact that this girl's dead.
Also, a whole crowd there, yet everyone's silent. So you got,
Yeah, what do you say at that point? Like, I mean,
well, no,
be a
but
brutal situation. Yeah.
that adds another level of like, fuck, this is bad. This is bad shit.
Yeah, and then you get, an hour later, Cal sat on the steps in front of the surgery room crying. It was a soft thing, his grief. A shake here, a few persistent tears slipping down his cheeks. Should have been able to save her. Liren knelt down beside him. I inspected your work, son. You did well. I'm proud. I failed, Cal whispered. Like, man, he's like the expectations there are just he's literally pinching an artery shut with his hand. Can't apply a tourniquet because there's so much blood, and he's like, I failed. It's like, no, there's nothing anyone
He,
could do. Like, it's just, it gives such a good example of how unrealistic his expectations are for himself that he's destined to not live up to them because
It
he
also
sets
seems
expectations way too high.
it seems like that applies much larger than just him. His expectations for like the world are unrealistic. You know, like it's just like
Some
yes, I
of
get
that
that you're
just
learning
he's
how to be.
naive, yeah. He's
Well,
very
I get
naive
that you're.
about like as a kid where he thinks like there's like I can't wait to get to the army and get with these light eyes that are going to be like all great people, and then they disappoint him when he gets in the army and he finds out that they're just people, and then he's like, well, I want to get to the real fighting because that's where all the real soldiers are at. And then he gets there and he's like, no, these are just regular people too. Like, yeah, they're all regular
that's
people, man.
that's also
Good
what
and bad.
that's what our world is like too. As you grow older,
Yeah.
you're like, oh wait, no one really knows what the fuck they're doing or talking about. They're all just kind of doing their best.
Yeah.
Like that whole authoritarian thing is like, oh, this is all bullshit. Like, so they don't know any better than I do necessarily. I mean, you know, they might have more experience and might be more educated in certain ways, but yeah,
Yeah,
well, and it's perfect. This is his profession that he's trained in too, because he comes out with like, I got all this badass training. I'm going to save every single life I come across. And then, nope, this isn't happening.
his dad comes at him in a good way, but if you had a typical child, but he does not see how he's unable to see how messed up Kaladin is to the point where he's not he's not a kid that should be a surgeon, and his dad should see this at some point. Like his dad should see like this is not a person who deals well with loss, and he's not gonna just get over it and gain calluses and he's gonna be able to move on with his life. He never does. He never gets to the point where his emotions are softened. It just gets more and more intense for him. So like Laren, you would think Laren should have been, being his dad, should have been able to spot that his kid struggles with this kind of shit, and maybe this isn't the right profession for him. Because he's like,
I mean,
I've known men who practice for hours and hours yet still froze when confronted by a wounded person. It's harder when it takes you by surprise. You didn't freeze. You went to her, administered help, and you did it well. I don't want to be a surgeon, Cal said. I'm terrible at it. They're inside, rounding the steps, sitting down beside his son. Cal, this happens. It's unfortunate, but you couldn't have done more. That little body lost blood too quickly. Cal didn't reply. You have to learn when to care, son, Laren said softly, and when to let go. You'll see. I had a similar problem when I was younger. You'll grow calluses. It's like, no, he won't.
well, it's a difficult thing because also, I mean, yeah, you would like to think it's your son, you would know, or you should look for the signs, you should recognize the signs. But I mean, he's 13, and he's probably. I mean, obviously, what he's thinking is he'll grow out of it, and he'll eventually realize and learn and become an adult, and then realize that you can't save everybody. But yeah, so I mean, I would give Laren some credit in the sense that maybe it just takes time, and he hasn't, or he just hasn't recognized it yet. Who knows? I mean, it's a hard one because
You gotta think Cal's though's been apprenticing under him for years.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you're not seeing signs of we're moving in the right direction and this is getting easier for him, at some point it's like when do you start to take notice that hey, this isn't getting any easier for the kid?
It's an interesting balance because obviously he has the skill, right?
Yeah.
So it's temperament's the problem.
It's the same problem with like the war. He's a great warrior. He's a great surgeon. He's just not fit for those jobs. He can't handle the negative consequences of him, and it's not the best position for him to be in. Even though he's fantastic at him when he's doing it and things are going well, or he's just in the moment. He's good. It's just he can't fucking deal with the tragedy of those that is just a natural part of those jobs.
Yeah, maybe he just needs to be like a gardener. He needs to chill the fuck out, man.
With lower stakes. Something where death is not the result of failure. You don't put someone who can't handle death into a position where there's death all the time.
Yeah, all around you. Yeah, it's constant.
obviously like
that's intense.
the Bridge 4 stuff. I mean, he's a slave, but regardless, being a soldier, being a surgeon, not ideal for Kaladin given his, temperament, how he handles loss. And you get it. I mean, you get it when you're in his head, like and this is a good thing, Cal thought, another tear trickling down his cheek. You have to learn when to care and when to let go. In the distance, Harl continued to wail.
Tell him that.
Yeah.
Go tell Harl, hey, man, you just got to know when to care. And right now, you need to turn that shit off, bro. This is too, you're being loud. It's too intense.
Yeah. Stop crying. You're making me feel bad. Like, hey, man, you're making me feel really bad. I tried really hard, and you're making me feel bad about it.
Jesus. I don't know if anyone has that type of audacity.
Yeah. Fucking little shit, get the fuck out of my face.
It's so weird to laugh at, but that type of like that level of audacity actually is funny.
Yeah.
In that situation.
Yeah.
But it's a difficult situation to have any comic.
As long as they're not real characters. Like, yeah. If it happened in a real life situation, be like, dude, what is your problem, you monster?
Yeah. Shit.
Dude just lost his daughter. Leave him alone. But yeah, this is a good example of why Kaladin is not built for the type of jobs that he gets put in. And what makes the story interesting though is the fact that this is a terrible position to put him in. He doesn't handle it well, and then just seeing how he perseveres and he gets through, because sometimes it's not ideal. Sometimes you are put in bad situations where you're not in a situation that is good for you, and how do you persevere and keep moving forward even though you don't want to and you want to give up? How do you just keep fucking grinding forward? And Kaladin is like the prototype of someone who just has dealt with a lot of shit and just keeps moving forward and keeps going, even though he wants to quit all the time. He doesn't.
That's what I was going to say. What's so important and what's so great about the character and why it's a story of perseverance is, I mean, the next chapter, he wakes up, I don't want to open my eyes. If I open my eyes, I'm back in my life again, and my life is fucking wretched. Yeah, and we got that the previous chapter with Bridge 4 before he had any hope, and then he has a little bit of hope, and then it's like, yeah, I still don't want to do this. Like he wakes up and he's just like, the nightmare is reality. Reality is the nightmare. So I don't want to do this, but yet he forces himself to do it. And then it's like, well, I'm up. So what now? And then little glimmers. He's just getting little glimmers, which keep pushing him in the right direction. So yeah, the perseverance story is so compelling with Kaladin's character arc from just, 300 pages in. I mean, that's what we've continuously seen.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons I like reading Kaladin's chapters so much is I don't relate to what he's going through. I don't relate to like his outlook on life. Like I don't go down the dark paths that he goes down. I didn't live his life either. So, there's obviously he's lived a tough life, but he seems to be just have a natural tendency towards depression. I don't have that. So, but I can empathize with, how rough his situation is and how hard it is on him. And, you could respect the shit out of someone who struggles that mightily with these situations and struggles and fails and takes it really hard, but gets up, keeps going, keeps pushing forward, keeps trying, even though he wants to quit, he doesn't. It's easy to respect someone like that who just keeps fucking chugging along.
It's hard to not respect somebody like that. I mean, unless you're just talk about calloused.
Yeah, it's one thing to like keep pushing forward when it's easy. I mean,
well, getting up and doing the day again, you're being rewarded every day.
Yeah.
Well, so that's completely different.
Like Elakar pushing forward is not that impressive. He's sitting there going high-fiving everybody, getting champagne blasts all the time. It's different when you're Kaladin. But yeah, like Kaladin's like a special example of that perseverance because it is so hard. Like, I mean, he goes the flashback, like you see him, starts off with he's in the he's a soldier, and it looks like, all right, this is going to be like the badass soldier. And then right off the bat, gets kneecapped, loses everybody. And then the next thing we know, he's a slave, goes through shit, is ready to kill himself, then comes back and a terrible bridge run. Like, I mean, when he finally, he's like, all right, I'm going to save everybody. Still, like, they have one of the worst bridge runs that they've had. And they lose a bunch of people, and, he saves some of them, but loses a bunch. Yeah, it's just nothing but rough shit that he goes through.
Well, and that one, again, is an example of the Kaladin guarantee. If without the Kaladin guarantee, if he would have been more realistic, where it's like, all right, we're going to lose 1/3 or 1/4 of the amount of people we usually lose, instead of, we're not going to lose a single guy. Like, this is not realistic, bro. Like, but it was actually effective. Come to find out, typically Bridge 4 loses the most by far, and then they turn the whole thing around. So he did.
It seems like, it's a weird mix where it only works in this weird mix where, like, without that absurd, impossible task that he's striving for, he'd probably just give up. If he didn't think that the perfect was possible, he'd probably give up. So, you don't even, it seems like you probably don't even want to take that from him, because if he doesn't believe that he can save everybody, then he might just not try at all.
I mean, there is something to be said for that, even in our own lives, is like, shoot for that goal that it seems unattainable. If you get anywhere close, you're doing better than you were before. Like, at least go for it.
Except for, with most people, they'd be able to settle for something below the perfect. He can't. He can't take the what I'm also not getting the perfect. So it's a weird mix between both, where it's like, he probably can't. He probably doesn't go on if he doesn't think he can achieve the perfect. But because he can't achieve the perfect, he also takes it extremely hard.
Well, what I'm also more envisioning is, tripling your income and settling for doubling it.
Yeah,
he's trying to save every life, and 8 get killed. So I mean, he has to still live with what now the blood's on his hands. Not exactly the same as, like, I didn't make as much money as I wanted to. Like, the stakes are a little different.
But I mean, it's like, blood's not even on your hands. You're a slave. You're being forced to do this. Like, how can you possibly? Yeah, I know, but I'm just it's so unrealistic, because it's like, how what could you have possibly done differently? Like, and eventually he gets the, hey man, do the sideways carry, and we save everybody in my crew, but you wipe out a shit ton of other people.
Yeah. But I didn't know
like that. They just start like, well, hey, stop shooting at them. They got their shit unlocked. Let's take out these other people.
That's why
seem to be trying to mimic it, but are doing it very badly.
So that's where Kaladin has to turn on the cognitive dissonance. Yeah, but I don't know those guys. That's Bridge 4.
I don't. That's
Bridge 3. I don't know.
I didn't promise to save them. I did not promise to save them. They did not get the Kaladin guarantee. Do you see any check marks on their head?
Yeah. It's and this is a great example of what you're just describing. Is Liren's like, there's nothing else you could have done. Everything you did was as good as you could have.
Yeah,
you just got to live with it. And he's like, I live with nothing. I'm a failure, and I hate this, and I'm never going to do this. And man, yeah, that is the kind of thing. If you are Liren, you got to start paying a little bit more attention to, unless you just walk away like, no, he'll be fine. He's going to get it one day. He's getting it.
Figure it out. He's been doing this for like 5 straight years. It's not getting any better.
Like, he keeps going in these huge bouts of depression where he can't get out of bed for like 4 days. You're like, are you just ignoring this? Like
he needs Tien to give him special rocks to fucking get him out of his dour moods. Like, I don't know, man. Maybe this isn't the life for your son.
Like, I don't know their name, but it's like, he's a steward. That's what we do. We make shoes. We're surgeons. He's a Johnson boy, and that's what Johnson boys do. It's like, dude, you're gonna ruin this kid's life?
Yeah,
because your fucking idea of what he should do.
Yeah,
come on, man.
his mom's really good. Like she tells him, she's like, "Hey, you don't have to be a surgeon. It's like you can do whatever you want. You don't have to be a surgeon." And like she tells him like in this book where
Hmm.
like he's sitting
Yeah, I
there
remember. Yeah.
contemplating what he wants to do, and she's like, "Hey, just so you know, you don't have to do this. You have opportunities to do other things with your life." And he's like, "No, this is what I want. This is what I want." So after he decided, I'm going to be a surgeon, I think this was like after that kid disrespected him. And then he
Hmm.
was like, "Stop calling me Cal, call me Kaladin. And I'm going to be
Hmm.
a surgeon. I'm going to go to Cabranth and I'm going to be a surgeon." He decided, I'm not letting these people talk down to me. I'm going to better
Yeah,
myself. But
he swings hugely like he always does. He swings huge in one direction, then all the way back in the other, right?
yeah,
Because he gets that staff and he's like, hey, I'm a fucking. I don't remember if he goes completely down the road of like I'm a soldier, but I remember the impression is you get like this is what he's gonna do. This is what he's made for. And then yeah, after that meeting where I think what's her name, Lyra, uh,
Laurel.
Laurel, yeah, basically like fucking disses him in public. That whole incident where he's
Well,
just
not
like,
in public, in the kitchen with that other
yeah,
kid.
yeah. Well, and like the way he walks out of that, he's like, I'm not gonna be like them. Fuck this noise. I'm a surgeon and blah blah blah. Like he gets 100% focused in that direction, and it's kind of in spite of that situation.
Yeah. There Sanderson does a really good job in the family dynamics, like because they're very different, but you get some interesting ones. Like you got Cal with Liren and his mom, Tien, and then you have Shallan's completely fucked up
Yeah,
family,
yeah.
and then you got like Dalinar with Adolin and Renarin, and throw in like Navani, and you don't get a lot of like Navani and Elhokar. I wish we got more
Hmm.
of that, like
Yeah, yeah.
Navani and Elhokar
She's an
and
interesting character.
Yasna.
Hmm.
But because Yasna's not around and killed in the beginning of the second book, so you don't get that family dynamic. But the ones you do get are interesting and they're different, and they're not they have distinct personalities, and so their interactions are very different. And that's obviously a sign of a good writer. Like all good writers are able to differentiate their characters, and they don't feel the same, and it's not just one note. But it's got interesting. It's beyond just they're different from each other. They got interesting stories that are interesting to read, even though
I
some of them go in some super dark paths.
yeah the I would really yeah now that you mention it, I would really love to see more of Navani and Yasna. They're both really interesting characters.
Yeah, yeah, and because they're both headstrong and they're
Talented
both,
and
yeah.
very quite brilliant, actually. Not just intelligent, but brilliant.
Although Navani is much less self-assured than Yasna. Like Navani's almost like her confidence is in her position and that she's in a powerful position, but if she's with other powerful people, she tends to look down on herself. Not so much like when she's dealing with people just having conversations, but like when she looks at herself compared to other people that are in like the field of fabrials and that kind of stuff, she tends to diminish what she is.
Hmm.
But Yasna would not be like that at all. Yasna, I can't when you see her in the first book, like I can't picture her not being extremely confident in something. And if she wasn't good at something, it would just be like, yeah, I'm not good at that, and wouldn't care, wouldn't move on. She would
Hmm.
just be like, that's not my thing. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
she's uber
she's
fucking
great.
confident in herself.
Yeah, her whole thing with Shallan is awesome. And I mean, she's aggressive, but then she's willing to like, accept the unexpected, I guess, and kind of open her mind to other things. When at first quite reluctant. She's a really compelling character.
Yeah, very analytical. Not not the opposite of Kaladin. She is not emotional.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
Definitely not.
Lyrian would have loved her as his daughter. Like she'd have been a badass surgeon.
Oh
Like
yeah,
they
yeah.
should have switched places. Kaladin should have been doing research, and she should have been the surgeon.
Actually, yeah, that's not a bad idea. That would have been, yeah, that would have been a good role reversal with, yeah,
Ye-
her traits and his, yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I think that's all I got on that chapter.
Yes.
All right, so chapter 21 is titled Why Men Lie. And in this chapter, we see Kaladin the day after his bridge run, where he lost a number of people but was able to save a few of them and brought them back. Get the reaction by the camps to him saving some people. And then we get Kaladin devising his plan for how he's going to keep these guys alive.
Yeah, and gets a couple of allies, basically. Starts to build his group, basically, right?
Yeah, he wakes up, basically like pulling together two of the guys and getting them back with a purpose, which is like a big part of how he's able to get these guys on his side and get them back to living a life is he gives them a purpose and a goal.
When he starts with the live by examples type situation, just showing
Yeah, he earns
there
their
is something
trust.
that you can do. Yeah, yeah, like and literally doing it. It's not like it's easy. I mean,
No,
shit. Like,
and
yeah,
it'd be hard not to earn their trust. It's one thing like to earn their trust, but then to get them to start living again is another step. But like to earning their trust, I think it'd be pretty tough not to have at least some trust of the guy after you saw he's busting his ass, and then
hmm
when they're in the middle of the shit, the guy is risking his life to save those guys, and to the point of exhaustion where he's like trying to drag a guy back when he can't even stand himself. So he's like falling over, and Rock has to come out and get the guy and pull him back. And then he tries to go out again, and they have to be like, "No, you
I mean,
can't do it, man."
and it's also, I mean, going back to Rock. I mean, he took his spot
Yeah,
right on the bridge run, so he basically put himself within the range of certain death and should have died. And
like
actually, it's
even
so
even if you
interesting.
were completely despondent and you were just like, "I'm not trying anymore. I give up on life," you'd still be. I think you could still look at Kaladin and be like, well, that dude right there legitimately cares. Like
Yeah, yeah.
he's not some brown noser or some try hard. This guy, he definitely tries hard, but he's different. He tries hard in that this guy is like a unstoppable force. He's just gonna keep going. He's just different.
Yeah, and you can't really deny, especially when he's saving lives. I mean, he's doing it for the best of reasons.
Yeah.
He's like willing to save your life. So I mean, how
And
can
no matter
you?
what the risk is for himself.
Yeah,
Like I mean, he's really willing to risk his life to run at the front of the bridge, even though he doesn't have to. Who does that? And then when the arrows are flying, who runs out into the arrows to go and grab somebody that's already injured, who they don't like in their mind, they're like, what's the point? Like, even if you
hmm
bring them back, they're too hurt. They're not going to bring these guys back. They're not going to give them medical care. And he's like, I'm going to get that taken care of too. It's like, I'm going to save them now, and then I will get them back to the camp. And then when I get them back to the camp, I will figure out a way to save them. And he just keeps coming through. Like at that
hmm
point, you got to be like, dude, the dude comes through.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Well, and
like I know
that's where
he's
you
got his
start.
own unrealistic goals, but I don't
Yeah,
I don't think I'm gonna survive. So the fact that he's able to save people and stuff, like he's definitely blowing some nips off
well,
of these guys,
yeah.
no matter how despondent they are.
That's where you start appointing the leader. That's where you're like, all right, I'm gonna fucking follow this guy
Yeah,
because he's able to come
yeah,
through
it'd
with all
be
these different
easy to
circumstances.
follow.
Well, and
It'd be, and just the guy cares so damn much. Where it'd be like, man, this guy, I want to run through hell for this guy.
well, all that being said, I have a lot of Moash in me. When I see dude like doing shit instead of like this is our relaxing time, you're gonna fucking decide to train when we don't have to. my initial resistance, knowing myself, would just be like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like
Yeah.
I would be the guy that's like, no, we don't have to do this, until
Yeah.
you convince me of the end result and what we're actually trying to do. Then I would be on board, But initially, no, I'd be extraordinarily resistant.
Yeah.
I would be
And
Moash.
I'm more of like a rock or a Tef with some loping in him. I'm much more optimistic. So even in a real bad situation, I'm usually fairly optimistic about at least how it's going to work out for me. I'm pretty optimistic about things, and I don't like get Lopin's a little bit different when that he's just at a high no matter what is going on. That guy is just things are great no matter how bad they are. He's having the fucking time of his life. I'm not quite like that.
Yeah, I'm not that guy, but
I don't have
what I mean by
so like kind of like a Teft, but with a more optimistic Teft.
I'm more saying I'd be more like a Moash, where I'd be resistant
100%
to follow the guy that decides.
Yeah,
the guy that decides I'm the quarterback. Be like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, no,
you know what I'm saying?
So
you're the captain.
I said the last episode you're a Moash. Like I said in the last episode, I said you're a Moash. I was like, you would 100% be the Moash of the group.
Okay, now I don't think our examples line up because I'm not.
See, that's a total Moash thing. Like I agreed with you, and now you're being like, well, no, now I don't agree with it. Now I think it's wrong.
I'm not going to say I align with someone as in every single fucking aspect. My point is in the sense that he's
I know. I'm when as being seriously, yeah. You would be like Moash in the way you described it.
Yeah, but and then again, he's literally saving these guys. No one else is, and he's the idea that he's going to be punished, like almost executed for saving people, is fucking nuts.
Yeah,
right. That's how far they take it. Is like, no, don't even give a glimpse that they have a chance out of this shit. Like, what the fuck, man? Like, that's very. That's real sadistic in terms of, and then Sadius even pushed. Well, I guess I'm really jumping ahead, but. I was going to say Sadius even pushes it to the point that he's like, no, just, he can bring him back. Just let's all watch him starve to death.
Yeah.
Like, use him as an example. Just string him up. That's fucking crazy.
But so as far as the way it starts, you get again from Hoyd and his letter to Frost. It's one need only look at the aftermath of his brief visit to Cell to see proof of what I say. So we get the second half of that in then the next chapter. But like as far as what he's saying there, Cell is another planet. So again, he's talking about Cosmere related stuff that is outside of the Stormlight archive, but it's from another series in the Cosmere. But it's not worth going into because you haven't read those books. But it's something we can, when we start expanding on these things, we'll come back to stuff like this. But
I like that
so
he wakes up with basically extraordinary hangover, and it's just bad, right? Head pounded, every length of muscle, every inch of skin, all ached.
Yeah, imagine
He's
like
just fucking
going through like the most intense workout of your life after you haven't been working out.
Yeah, he can barely move.
Yeah, it'd be rough. It's hard enough like just doing like a regular workout, and then you wake up the next day and you're like, oh shit. It's not even the next day. It's the day after the next day is the worst.
It's the day after the next day. And then what's particularly bad is, you also wake up like, what goes through your head isn't like how bad the day is going to be. It's just like, oh shit, I don't feel so good. In this case, it's I don't feel so good, and I guess they don't have a bridge run today, but he's not living a life of luxury here.
Yeah, and that's not even a guarantee. I guess they have schedules and stuff, but still, they could still easily go on a bridge run 2 days in a row. It just kind of depends. So they don't have any control over their lives. Slavery, I'm starting to get the sense that slavery is not that great.
Yeah, the
I
idea of
don't
not
think I
having
would like it.
control over your own life,
No,
yeah,
I do
that's
not
a
think I would like
big
it.
problem.
I'm certain.
Ye-
I don't know about you, but I think having choices in what you do is a good thing. I'm
I
just going to
agree.
say that. I don't care how
That might be
controversial that
controversial.
is.
It might be. It might be. I don't know. We might be breaking some boundaries here, but yeah,
You might
I
lose the
think it might be
pro-slavery
preferred.
crowd, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Again, not to be too controversial, but I'm okay with
Yeah,
losing the people that are
pro-slavery.
that are into slavery.
uh, what?
I hope this was in your notes.
Yeah, it
I really
was.
hope this was planned
Yeah, I
upon.
was like, I definitely want to riff on this for a while.
So I do have a question. I don't
Yeah.
even know if it's really significant, but curse you have, he thought. You can boot me out of my bunk even now. Who's have?
Yeah, I did put that in a curse you have. He thought you can boot me out of my bunk even now. Have is a sergeant in Amaram's army. He teaches Kaladin, basically kind of teaches him the ropes of how to be a soldier.
Mm,
But you've seen him when Shalon goes and sneaks into the camp and she's does the mirage of herself to make her look like
hmm
a little boy or whatever that's like going
hmm
in to give Amaram a message. The soldier
hmm
that confronts her in that scene, that's him. That's App.
mm.
Very
Okay.
small role. Very
Did
small
we
role. He's barely mentioned at all.
did we read about him when Cal was first with Amaram?
I don't believe so. I mean, he's a couple brief mentions. He's
Uh,
not a big character. But he doesn't play a central role. He's just a name on
it's
in the story.
it's interesting how the dialect is because there are times where it's like, man, is that like a herald that I'm not thinking about? When they say it's curse you, like storm, whatever. It's like it's stuff like that. Every now and then they're naming like a herald or something. In this sense, he's literally talking about the first person that would have been kicking him out of barracks. Right? Seems like right. This
Yeah,
was his first whatever drill sergeant. It seems. Well,
but
good.
yeah.
Now I
So
know.
yeah, but I did I did try to look him up to see if there's anything more that I was missing on the guy, but no, he's just a very minor named character. But yeah, and then oddly, more than a few men were awake, sitting up. They watched Kaladin in silence. They were waiting. Kaladin realized they wanted to see if I'd get up. So I mean, these are guys that are used to being just completely downtrodden and given up, and so now they're it's piquing their interest. Like, what is up with this guy? Why is he trying so hard? Why isn't he quitting?
Well, that's obviously that's represents some bit of hope, right? A glimmer of hope that
Yeah,
they're even interested. To
yeah,
and even from their perspective, you would think, I mean, if nothing else, it's a curiosity, right?
yeah,
So even just that in itself, but would also represent a glimmer of hope, knowing what he just did. So you would have to think the sparks are starting to go off, you know.
yeah. And so he checks on the three wounded. Leighton, he was shocked that he was still alive. Said his breathing was still shallow, his pulse weak, and his wounds dire, but he was alive. Needed some apothecary salves, but how? So he starts postulating his plan, in the back of his mind. That's kind of the running theme of the chapter is how is
Mm-hmm.
he going to save these guys? And then, he checks on Hobber. Hobber was smiling openly. He was round faced and lean with a gap between his teeth and short black hair. Thank you, he said. Thank you for saving me. Thank you, Hobber whispered, taking Kaladin's hands, clutching it. He actually seemed to be tearing up. Like those kind of things, like it always I those are harder to read for me than like a death scene just because of it's like a guy being so grateful that someone just didn't leave him to die,
Yeah.
or just like, common decency, trying to save him, trying, placing some sort of value on his life, where it was better to attempt to save him than to just leave him to die a horrible, horrible death of probably dehydration. out in the middle of nowhere, on some fucking on the Shatter Plains. Like, just that thankfulness for common decency is those are things that are harder to read for me than someone dying, like, because I don't, the characters, they're not real life people. I've had go through real life people dying, that's different, so than the book, so it doesn't hit the same, but just the simple
Pretty
decency of it is
intense.
just it's just rough, like, to when you kind of put yourself in their shoes, and like what kind of life you'd have to live to where that kind of common decency would be so meaningful to you.
Well, I mean, obviously, if you were left to die, whoever saved you, you're gonna have some appreciation. But yeah, it's pretty wild to think from both perspectives, because Kaladin's basically doing what he sees as decent, but nobody else is doing. I mean, what he's doing is illegal. This is fucking nuts.
That's what I mean. I mean, that's what kind of I think it just shows how rough their situation is yeah, it's one thing to be thankful. Obviously, you'd be thankful that someone is, saved you. That's one thing. But he's thankful that they didn't just leave him to die, because that's what they do. Like, if you get hurt, you're left to die a horrible death. Like, there's no reason Hubbard needed to be left. This is a guy, he's gonna fucking live. Like, he's
Yeah,
got,
he's gonna be off his feet for a few days.
yeah,
But
he's not, he wasn't gonna die. And so, like, this, like, Leighton is a different story. Leighton is badly injured and he's not even conscious. And so that's a little bit different. That's like literally saving someone's life. This is just not leaving someone to die, because it just will be an inconvenience to try to save him. But Haber's plenty healthy enough to try to save. Like, it doesn't make any sense to just leave him to die unless you just completely don't value his life. So it's not even, it's not the thankfulness of thank you, you saved my life, you treated my wounds. It's thank you that you gave a shit and tried, you helped me at all, that you even tried. Like, no one else would have. No one else would have. They would have all just left and walked away and left me to die a brutal death.
So it seems so, like, that's the policy, is any wound.
Yeah. They just
Right?
leave
Like,
you.
basically,
If you can't go back, if you can't come back carrying the bridge, you're done.
yeah. So if you can't walk back yourself and carry
Yeah.
the bridge, yeah, you're fucking left behind. Yeah, that's brutal.
Loophole. I'm gonna make myself look really injured, really badly, and I'm gonna chill and let them walk away, and then I'm getting up, heading out.
Just go the other direction.
Yeah. It's kind of like
hook up with the Parshendi.
when Kaladin was like, they all got away, they all walked. The problem would be is you don't have a bridge. So yeah, I guess you can't even do that. So that's how shitty this situation is. You can't even like
That's
fake
bad.
like you're too hurt to come back, because if you don't have the bridge to cross the Shattered Plains, you can't get out of there. You're just stuck on some plateau.
Yeah, and you don't have any food, water.
No.
So good luck.
Yeah, you're just dead. So if you can't walk back, like, you got a very badly sprained ankle. They're just like, sorry about your luck. Like, dude, like, no, this is like a couple weeks, man. I'll be good. It's just a sprained ankle. You're gonna carry those bridges anyways. Let me get a lift.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm sure it's not like that extreme. I'm sure like someone's got a twisted ankle, they're not just leaving them to die. That would just be a waste. But if they're injured at all, there's any chance they're gonna die, they're dead.
Well, I mean, it's obviously very wasteful. I mean, we talk about how Sadius is wasteful with the approach he has, but he's faster. That's like the whole thing. Is like,
Yeah.
he has no common respect for human life, and that gets displayed by how they do the bridge runs. But I mean, leaving a guy back who's not really that hurt. I mean, what do they say? In 3 weeks, he'll be back on his feet. Like, I mean, that is very wasteful. But again, that's not respecting human life, period.
No.
If they're not fully functioning, done, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, Kaladin looks at it where when he thinks about what Sadeas is doing as far as not allowing them to feed him, he's like it's cheaper for them to get a new person than to try to heal the people that are injured. But I don't know that that calculation is accurate because when Dalinar thinks about the situation, he's like, we're churning through so many slaves, we're losing so many that we're eventually gonna have to start making excuses to put guys on the bridges. Like we're gonna have to give them trumped up
Put
charges.
soldiers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we're gonna eventually run out of slaves. So I don't know that the calculation that Kaladin makes in this chapter is accurate. I think that's Kaladin thinking not having an accurate portrayal of the information because Dalinar certainly does not think that that's the case. Because we've talked about like how, man, they would have to be churning through so many people where you think they would start running out, and Dalinar is thinking along those lines. He's like, eventually we're going to run out of people the way, you know, Sadeas is burning through them. So it doesn't seem like a good long-term strategy what Sadeas is doing.
Well, then
But he
also
does not
hence-
seem to give a shit.
Yeah, I was gonna say also hence the idea of like we might want to rethink this whole war thing we got going on because
Yeah.
this isn't like you said, we're burning through people, burning through resources. Who's basically living out here now. This is their life. So they're just digging in their heels basically.
But yeah, and then he checks on the last guy who's basically just got kind of war fatigue. He's just shook up by the war. And so,
Staring
like,
into
you know, the
nothing.
guy's like, he's been hit in the head. I think Hopper said, no, Kaladin said, it's battle shock. It'll wear off. I hope. Basically talking about he's got PTSD. He's just completely shook from what's happened. It's understandable.
There's a song about this, Mob Deep. It's called Shook Ones, Part 1.
Yeah. It's a halfway crook.
It's classic. Absolute classic. If you haven't heard it, you should look it up.
But yeah, and then Kaladin walks out. I like you got up, Kaladin told himself, might as well get on with it. He forced himself to go outside, do his stretches, body complaining at each motion. Then he checked his own wound. It wasn't too bad, though infection could make it worse. And this is where I like the description of this, like where he goes, he picks up the wood and starts going through his routine, and body starts to loosen up a little bit, starts to get feeling okay and stuff, because that is how it works. You could say, I mean, obviously he went to extremes, but when you're working out, like, you know, the initial process is kind of painful, but once you get going again, kind of loosen up, and eventually you get to the point where you still feel soreness, but you eventually grow accustomed to the soreness where you kind of, if you don't feel it, you feel like you're not actually working out hard enough.
Very similar. Sunday, I woke up super hungover, and it wasn't from working out; it was from drinking way too much alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And what I did was I built a trampoline, and I felt great afterwards.
Yeah.
So that's what you should do: just build trampolines. Just populate your.
That would be a good job for Kaladin. He could be
Yeah.
a trampoline salesman.
Yeah,
He builds them for people, like, because when people like give him that smile for a job well done, like, man, that makes it worth it.
Yeah, I can see
What
him.
kid doesn't love a trampoline?
Yeah, cows trampolines.
Did you ban your kids from using your trampoline?
No.
That's mine.
This is mine.
It's mine.
This is mine.
You're gonna break it. You'll ruin it.
Make them watch me.
Yeah.
Make them watch me. Look how high I'm getting.
You stand right over there. Don't get any closer. But look how much fun I'm having. Whee!
The neighbor kids get to watch. No, nobody gets in. Put a padlock on the exterior.
Yeah. Hilarious. But yeah, so he starts thinking about the apothecary. He's like, you know, because he's thinking, that infection is going to kill Leighton. He's like, it wasn't too bad, though. The infection could make it worse. He's like, Stormwind's take that apothecary. Then he immediately regretted the bitter thought against the elderly apothecary. That stretched faced corpse sprint of a man.
Corpse.
Or what was
it?
it? Decay Spren wearing a man's face.
Jesus. I like this. I had a note. I appreciate Kaladin at least recognizing the root of the problem rather than just the face of the problem.
Yeah. I mean, what is the guy supposed to do?
Well, exactly. But too few people. I mean, I see that all the time in life where it's like, oh, the fucking grocery store raising the price. It's like, what? It's not just the guy that runs the grocery store. He's the problem.
Yeah.
He's the reason you're mad that prices are going up. Like,
yeah, if that was the case, like, the guy would have raised the prices, last year or the year before that.
What's he waiting on?
Before that? Like, why is he chilling, waiting? Yeah, there's got to be a root cause for
just now taking advantage. I love that. It's like now he's just taking advantage. That's what he's doing. It's like every time there's a hurricane,
all of them,
like, they're just taking
the grocery stores are all
exactly
in it together. Like none of them are like, if I had lower prices, I would take all their customers.
Yeah. I noticed at the grocery stores down here that everything's measured in Florida ounces. Did you ever notice that?
Florida.
Like my can of soda is 12 Florida ounces.
Yeah, how many
12 FL ounces?
How many Florida ounces is in an ounce?
Why is it all named after Florida? I don't know.
Yeah. What is it, special ounces here?
Special measurements?
Oh, man. But all right, so back at it. And then, he regretted that. And then he's like, he blames it on Sadius. He's like, Sadius is who he should be cursing. Sadius was responsible for the wound and was also the one who had forbidden the surgeon's hall to give supplies to the bridgemen, slaves, and servants of the lesser nuns. He's like, they stood around the barrel, and part of that too, when he's talking about that and he's thinking about Sadius, it's building up this hatred for Light Eyes, that is a persistent theme. Where his animosity for Light Eyes just keeps growing and growing through this book.
Yeah, it's a source of frustration. It's a source of it's a source for his hatred to be pointed at.
Yeah.
Which it makes sense for a character in his position because, I mean, he's always stewing, right? Yeah. He's on a constant boil, man. And it kind of recedes and it comes back up. And he's always got somebody that's in the way that he can be frustrated with. And
which is easy. It's easy to understand why. Look what they're doing to him.
Yeah. Well, and it's one thing for that to be, say, Gaz, but Gaz is not powerful, right? He's not calling any shots. He's just, he's
and Gaz is not in this position because he saved a Light Eye's life, a powerful Light Eye's life. He saved his life and then turned down a shard blade and shard plate. He turned it down and gave it to one of his men. And that's why he's there. He's like, nothing of what I did is bad. I did a great thing. I saved that fucking prick's life. I saved his life. And then because I didn't give him the shard blade and shard plate, or I gave it to someone else. And even if he'd given it to Amaram probably still kills him because he's like, oh, who want it back?
Yeah. Well, or you can just say that. You're remembering it wrong. That's all it is.
Amaram,
you probably forgot. The
crazy
what
thing
really
is,
happened.
why? Amaram could have been like, look, here's the deal. I'm going to take this, and then you're going to get in front of everybody and tell them that you're giving it to me, or I'm going to kill all your men.
Yeah, could have given him a chance. Could have given him a choice.
He could, he could have even softened it up. He's like, got to give it to me because of XYZ. And then if he doesn't do that, then you ramp up the threat. And if that threat doesn't work, you ramp it up. He doesn't have to immediately start and I'm going to murder all these people and put you into slavery. And then think I did you a favor by putting you into slavery. You're welcome. You should be grateful.
So you got all that, angst, animosity, and muscle buildup that being a slave, Or you sell it to them like the pro-slavery people would sell it,
the idea, Amaram's such a jackass. The idea that selling him into slavery to be tortured and to be put into this environment that he's put in, before he's just getting dragged around in that cart like he's a caged lion and getting fed slop and just treated like garbage and just in a horrible position, and then eventually ends up where he's just cannon fodder for arrows. Thanks for not killing me, I guess. Like, somehow this is better.
Which he did. He sentenced him to death. The odds, he's not living through this.
No, like, I mean, it was a death. Putting him in slavery. This was a death sentence.
Especially in their world, yeah.
It just didn't work out that way. But it's not because of things went right. Things went wrong, and that worked out for Kaladin.
I love the idea that once they are reunited, Hammerhand's like, high five. You made it. I knew you had it in you. I knew
this would all work out well for you. I knew. It's like that. Sometimes you gotta go the tough love, but how much better is your life now because of me?
Give it to me. Oh man. Yeah, the audacity. Keep going to the crazy audacity of it.
But yeah, so he picks up the plank, starts working out, and then everybody, he couldn't go as fast. In fact, much of the time he could only walk. But as he worked, his ache soothed, his headache faded, his feet and shoulders still hurt, and he had a deep, latent exhaustion. But he didn't embarrass himself by falling over. And he had like several groups watch Kaladin out with outright hostility, where they worried that his practices would encourage their own bridge leaders to work them. So his people are watching him and are slowly gaining respect, but the other people are watching him like, fuck this dude.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
he's not saving their lives. And so,
yeah, I was going to say the other bridge crews, well, I was going to say that they probably don't know, but they would know because they would have seen what's-his-face's body on the bridge.
Yeah.
But like you said, he's not saving their lives, so it's more like, dude, will you chill the fuck out? Like, this extra credit shit is going to ruin everything for us. Now they're going to start grading on that curve and shit. Yeah.
It's like, our lives are bad enough. We got to start doing what you're doing.
Yeah, so this is what I was talking about earlier, where I was saying I'd be like Moash. I would definitely see it from their eyes, where it's like, man, come on, dude. Like, what are you doing, man? Like, you're fucking Billy Badass out here. Like, suddenly you're, no one and the other thing is no one gives a shit, bro. However, if you start to realize, oh, we all should give a shit.
Well, and I think they do. I think most of them, I mean, they're resistant to it, obviously, and they're still despondent, but they're starting to. He's gaining respect from what he's doing because it's genuine. Again, that's the big key is it's genuine. But yeah, and then like Syl comes up to him, she's like, "They're talking about you," and he's like, "Not surprising," Kaladin said between puffs. "Some of them think you've gone mad," she said, "like that man who just sits and stares at the floor. They say the battle stress broke your mind. Maybe they're right. I didn't consider that." And I like this little conversation where she's like, "What is madness?" She asked, sitting with one leg up against her chest, vaporous skirt flickering around her calves and vanishing into mist. "It's when men don't think right," Kaladin said, glad for the conversation to distract him. Men never seem to think right. It's a funny little interaction from her, like, just in the, like, getting that outside perspective of, like, I'm watching you guys, like, none of this shit makes any kind of sense. You guys all seem like you're insane. Like, if it's when you don't think right, well, none of this seems right.
Yeah. I love the concept then, because then it's like, okay, then who decides? Oh, so you all do.
Yeah.
What if you're all mad?
You just vote on it?
Yeah, it's pretty much, right?
Yeah, that's what she says. She said, "So you all just vote on it?" He's like, "Well, not so actively, but it's the right idea." Which kind of is.
Yeah.
Because it is a curve. Like, who's the crazy person?
Who's the
everybody
arbiter
thinks
that
differently.
Decides. Yeah, it's I mean, it's basically that person that's doing the things that nobody else is doing. So you basically look at them as like, this is a little inappropriate. And then, and once it disturbs others, that's when you're going to be put in a white coat and locked in a room somewhere after a while.
Yeah. Once people fear you and think you're dangerous, and then you might like start committing acts of violence, then that's when it gets a little dicey for you.
Yeah. Yeah. But if you can keep it, if you can keep that madness, under wraps and just, launch it into, interesting paintings and whatever else, then you can make it work for you, I guess.
I like this part with Syl though. Like you're starting to see the growth with her as she's starting to think more and she's starting to try to puzzle things out.
Abstract
She's like,
ideas.
yeah, where she's like, Kaladin, why do men lie? I can see what lies are, but I don't know why people do it. He's like, lots of reasons. Wiping sweat from his brow with his free hand and using it to steady the plank. Is it madness? I don't know if I'd say that. Everyone does it. So maybe you're all a little mad. He chuckled. Yes, perhaps. But if everyone doesn't, she said, leaning her head on her knee, then the one who doesn't would be the mad one. Be the one who's mad, right? Isn't that what you said earlier? Well, I guess, but I don't think there's a person out there who hasn't ever lied. Dalinar. Who? The Uncle's King, Syl said. Everyone says he never lies. Your bridgemen even talk about it sometimes. Which is a completely idealized version. It's similar to how Cal viewed Light Eyes when he was a kid, before he ever joined up with the war, why he's resistant to the idea now. Because he's learned, he's just gone from being naive to bad shit happens, so now he's just gone too far to the other side.
That's his thing, man. His pendulum's extreme. He either swings one way to the extreme or the other end of the extreme.
Yeah, where he's like,
he's an extreme
those Light Eyes, they're great men. They do nothing wrong. And then one of them trips him and he's like, fuck all Light Eyes. They're all pieces of shit. I hate them all.
Yeah, I like I like how he comes through with like absolute assuredness. Oh, he's a Light Eyes. That means he does lie. And he's a piece of shit.
Yeah, he's Light Eyes. Means he lies. But they're all the same, Syl. The more noble they look, the more corrupt they are inside. It's all an act. He felt quiet, surprised at the vehemence of his bitterness. Storm, you, Amaram, you did this to me. He'd been burned too often to trust the flame. So he also at least is a little bit self-reflective enough to realize that, part of his hatred is just his experience. It's he's not completely so deluded by his anger that he 100% is adamant that all Light Eyes are evil. Otherwise, he would never have any kind of trust for any of them. And he eventually grows to respect Dalinar and Adolin. He's a little bit self-reflective, but on the outside, it's kind of like one of those guys where, like, if you bring something up to them, they get all fucking heated. But then when they have a chance to kind of sit back and think about what you're saying, what they said and what you said, and they can kind of reflect on it and then adjust for the next time you talk to them. It's kind of one of those kind of type of guys.
It makes him a more compelling character for me. There are certain times where it can be interesting to read those guys that are just 100%, that's the way it is, and that's what I'm on, and I'm just going to run with that. That can be, in the right circumstances, that can work. If it's like, they're just going into battle or whatever, then it's understandable because they got to lock into that mode. But I appreciate, like, he has room for nuance because you want him to. I mean, as a nuance, or a more interesting, well-rounded character, you want him to be a little bit more self-aware, a little bit more intelligent and adaptable to the situations. And he is, when he realizes he shouldn't just hate the apothecary, he should hate Sadeas, or he should channel it to what the systematic problem is. Just like in this sort of situation, it's not just every single Light Eyes. It's Amaram, or it's, so it's coming from somewhere. To be aware of that, for me, is more interesting in building the character traits than just him being blind rage,
Well, yeah,
which would also still be.
It opens a character up to being able to change. Like, if a character is not able to be self-reflective, they're not going to change. Or if they do change, it's going to be weird. It's not going to make any kind of sense if they weren't, like, at least somewhat self-reflective before they changed, and they thought about why they viewed things the way they viewed them.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and that's definitely important. I mean, if you're going to read about a character who's one way in the beginning of the book and exactly the same way at the end, without any arc in between, that's typically not great.
No, it's not interesting, but also like a character that starts out one way and then just becomes something else without really any kind of like
without that being
process between it, where
accomplished.
it's like, what happened? How
Yeah.
did they get there? Like, I don't
Yeah.
understand. Like, what was their thought process? Like,
That
just
arc
seems
has to
unearned.
that arc has to be pretty clear and earned for that to be buyable, or for it to be bought in a compelling way to where you were in for the trip. If not, it's just okay. I guess that's how it ended up. But
Yeah. But yeah, then it was like, when she's sitting there talking, she's like, I don't think men were always this way, she said, absently getting a far off look in her face. I think that's important too, is she seems to be remembering, which we've talked about. Like, it's not the sprint, it's not a situation where they're growing and they're learning things. It's more of a case of amnesia and then recovering from that is what seems to be happening. It's a return of memories, much more so than she's learning. Like, it's not so much that she's saying, like, when she's like, I don't think men were always this way. It's not from experience or from her reading history books. It's this nagging thought in her mind where I think things were different previously.
So in the recent chapters, she has been speaking of, why am I remembering things, or why do I know that? So I think, and I like the way he's doing it here, that it's the same for us. I mean, if we start exercising our mind, you start doing, I remember when I had to force myself to get my undergrad. I had to do a bunch of math, and I'm not good at it, so I had to go through study courses. And my mind started thinking differently. I started to approach the situations differently than I had before, more strategically or what have you. I like that she's asking about what is madness, why do men lie? So she's dealing in abstract thoughts that would you would imagine, or at least I buy the idea that kickstarts her brain to start thinking a little bit more actively. Through that, it would make sense that I don't think men were always this way. And then just kind of pondering on that, or accessing the thoughts, I guess, and memories.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and then so it's like, Syl, he finally prompted, were you gonna say something? It seems I've heard men talk about times wherein there were no lies. There are stories, Kaladin said, about times of the heraldic epochs when men were bound by honor. But you'll always find people telling stories about supposedly better days. You watch, a man joins a new team of soldiers, and the first thing they'll do is talk about how wonderful his old team was. We remember the good times and the bad ones, forgetting that most times are neither good nor bad. They just are. Which is very true.
Mm-hmm.
People tend to have an overly romantic view of the past or an overly pessimistic view of the past. They overdo the bad times or the good times.
Yeah, it's really funny. People like to use the good old days as a reason to be pessimistic about the present, right? Oh, it's not like it used to be. Some of that's just age. People just, look at the past with like rosy colored glasses. But it's so often where it's just like, it's especially funny when people reminisce, and it's like, man, I was there with you. You weren't you weren't all jazzed up about this back then.
Yeah.
You had your complaints then too, man.
Yeah, I can remember one guy we worked with, like when he would tell stories about times where he was with me, like there was things where like he would describe and like saying things I did where it was like, man, they make me sound really freaking good. But that's not how things went at all. Like that is just like, it was much more mundane event than what he just described. And I'd have to be like pulling back his story, like after he would go and tell everybody, be like, yeah, no, it wasn't like that at all. It wasn't anything like that. It's like, it sounds like that was a really dope night and we did some crazy shit, but it was very mundane and chill night. But yeah, and then so we get, the stories. He continued between puffs. They prove it. What happened to the heralds? They abandoned us. What happened to the Knights Radiance? They fell and became tarnished. What happened to the Epoch Kingdoms? They crashed when the church tried to seize power. Can't trust anyone with power, so. He's like, what do you do then? Have no leaders? No, you give power to the Light Eyes and leave it to corrupt them. They try to, then try to stay as far away from them as possible. His words felt hollow. How good a job had he done staying away from the Light Eyes? He'd always seemed to be in the thick of them, caught in the muddy mire they created with their plot schemes and greed, which is completely against his personality. One, that's just him talking shit. That's not who he is.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of like, yeah, just give it to them and then let them fuck up. It's just try to stay out of their way. It's like, dude, that's not who you are at all. You are not hands off and just so well, just that's what you do. You just it's such a flippant thing to say for a guy that is just a unstoppable locomotive of moving forward and persisting. And he's just basically like, yeah, you just got to accept that's the way things are. It's like, yeah, okay. You probably should just accept some things, but you're not capable of that.
Yeah, that's interesting to come from him. It's Kaladin is that he's got so many. I mean, he's got flaws, obviously, but he's got these guards up in his own mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of like where he doesn't accept his own reality in so many ways, and he just like lashes out at his own perceptions in a way. You know what I mean? Like
he lashes out a lot. He says a lot of things he doesn't actually mean. Like he's one of those characters that he says a lot of things that he doesn't actually mean, or that when you examine him, you're like, that he doesn't believe what he's saying there. Like, I mean, that's just him just kind of being petulant sometimes, or just lashing out
like
and being
venting.
mad or angry and venting. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely written, and which makes him relatable and interesting to read, is because he's not just. Dalinar's more straight-laced. You can, when Dalinar says something, he usually means it. Kaladin's not like that. A lot of times he says things he doesn't mean, or that don't like fit with who he is. Like, this is an example of you're talking about a guy that is the definition of persistent, and this is more something like Lirin would say, that his dad would say. This is not like Kaladin's view of the world. His dad would be like, look, man, they're in charge. Just let them do their thing. Power corrupts. It sucks, but what are you going to do? Just try to stay out of their way. That's something his dad would say. It's not Kaladin.
Just work within their system. Do what you're going to do. And yeah, that's a good point. And what's interesting, one of the things that makes me think, or I kind of recognize it to be, well, it's interesting because if you're reading it and you're paying attention to what's going on, then you recognize, oh, he's just venting here. That's not really how he thinks. But then you can have people that will be like, oh, look what he said here. That's the way he thinks. Like, dude, you can pull a quote and say that, but if you're reading who he is, that's not really the way he feels. He has emotions, right? He runs hot as fuck. So people say things they don't fucking believe or agree with. People do that all the time, where it's like, yeah, I wish I didn't say that, or I could walk that back and explain a little bit further what I actually mean, But.
So it makes the writing interesting if you just take everything literally and by the word, and there's no real like emotion and regret and rethinking things and those kind of things. You just take that dynamic aspect away. The books become like children's stories, where it's just there's good, there's bad. You know what you're getting from both of them, and you know how the story is going to go, which is fine. I mean, it's just not a sophisticated story, and he writes characters. Like, he does a really good job of writing some dynamic characters in the Stormlight archives.
Well, and there's less activity on the part of the reader. You know what I mean? Where you're parsing through I use the word a lot today, but nuance. Like there's, well, and I guess Syl preps you for that as well, because Syl keeps you on your heels where you're like, what is this? I mean, for a while, I'm like, what's her deal? Because I'm trying to, it took me a while to like realize what she is, what is happening for her, like even just a moment ago where she's like, I know what a lie is, but what is it? It's very different than Pattern, right? Pattern fucking loves lies. They're delicious to him. Right? That's his whole thing. So it's
the Spren are different. And then like even like Kaladin, when he advances, like he has an epiphany or he has something good happen to him and it feels like he's moving forward, it doesn't all fall into place for him from that point on. He reverts back to, his personality. He falls back into depressions, and, these kind of things keep happening to him, which makes the story more realistic, where, you can run into the fact, like, people can get tired of, like, oh, it's the same thing. Like, he just keeps falling back into depression. Like, he doesn't seem to be advancing. And, where it's like takes 2 steps forward and then takes a step back. And it's like, yeah, but that's more realistic.
That's what people do. That's how people
Someone
are.
who suffers from depression is not just like, someone says the right word to them or something good happens in their life and they're better. Now they're not going to be susceptible to depression anymore.
That's again a rosy colored outlook. That's
Yeah.
a stepping back and acting like people are sim characters. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's what he's doing wrong, so just have him start doing this. It's not how
Yeah.
people are. They always
No.
revert back to the way they were, and people are emotional, right? So they get driven around by their emotions and their psychoses, and they have little ups and then downs again, and then ups and downs again, and that's why every January everybody's joining a gym, and they're done by mid-January, February, March.
January 2nd, it's over.
And they're trying to cancel, and Bally's is like, nah, not canceling, bro.
Yeah.
We got this contract.
Yeah. Well, good thing is next year's New Year's resolution, you don't have to sign up again. Then you get Gaz coming up to him, and he lets him know that they're not going to allow him to. The soldiers who can't work are not going to get paid. So he's not going to be able to just take their money and go buy them food and be able to help them out. So any food he's going to give them is going to have to come from him or the other guys, which throws a huge wrinkle in his plan.
I was going to say, I thought this was kind of interesting, and I guess maybe it's part of their dialect because their seasons are so short, but he comes up and he's like, you, pointing at Kaladin, and he says, hold a season. Like, is that, you know what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
It'd be like, hang on a second. Like, it's like that, right? So he's like, hold, I mean,
their seasons are weird too. Like, I mean, there's a part where Dalinar mentions like that the guys are saying it's gonna be, we're about to head into spring. Hopefully they're not wrong and it doesn't head into winter. Like their seasons are weird. They're not like
so they're
ours.
Unpredictable.
Yeah.
So maybe
one thing that seems to be consistent is the weeping, and that's why they say like this is my 16th weeping year or whatever. That they count their years they've been alive based on the weeping, because that's the thing that's consistent.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, yeah. The reason why I mention it is it's a good world building sort of small inclusion to have as a little trait for how you would say something. And I guess the idea that it's a little bit unpredictable also gives that room for, because if you're saying like, give me a moment's not exact, right? That's the whole idea with a moment.
Mm-hmm.
When you ask somebody for a moment, it's like, it's not exact. It's going to be a short period, but maybe longer.
I like, when he comes up and tells him that, Kaladin's like, how'd they find out? It's like, what are you talking about, man? You don't think anybody's going to notice? No one's going to talk? But yeah, and then, he tells him that he's like, all right, what does it matter? We didn't slow the army. Yeah, Gaz said, but Lamoral isn't too polished on the idea. So he goes to Sadeas and tells him, intending to have Kaladin strung up. And it's like Kaladin felt a chill. Strung up would mean hung out during a high storm for the Stormfather to judge. It was essentially a death sentence. It kind of gives the prelude to what eventually happens to him. And that he is strung up during a storm, which would be pretty brutal. Like, you see what happened to him during it, get whipped around, thrown around onto a building, debris hitting you. It'd just be brutal. And then, you see how in bad shape he was. And this is a guy that he can pull in Stormlight to heal himself. Someone else, he had a sphere in his hand when this was going on. Like, someone else wouldn't have been able to survive that.
Yeah, it sounds like it basically kills. Well, that's why they say essentially a death sentence. It sounds like most people, it is a death sentence.
Yeah, that's why, like, when after it happened and they looked at his sphere, it was already done. It was because as it was infusing, he was sucking in the Stormlight and healing himself.
Is that when they started calling him Stormblessed? After that, is that a thing that
They I think probably it's about that time when, but I mean, they'd been calling him that in the other army too. So it's just, it's a nickname that's, you're like in the very first chapter, he's like, it's like, what, why is everybody so confident? He's like, you're in Kaladin Stormblessed army.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, and then they start calling him that as well. And it seemed, obviously Kaladin's not going around telling them to call me that. But yeah, they independently, both groups came up with the same nickname.
That is the best. The best guys is the ones that's like,
call me Kaladin Stormblessed.
Yeah, call me. Well, my name's Kaladin, but everybody calls me Stormblessed. My name's George, but everybody calls me Coco. Or what do you want? T-Bone.
T-Bone, yeah.
You can call me T-Bone.
Okay, Coco. Call me Tank Toes. Tank Toes? That's my nickname.
All right, what? Twinkle Toes.
You're gonna have to explain that. Yeah, Twinkle Toes. Yeah, that's what would happen too.
Yeah, that's what immediately would happen. Somebody tries to say, "Hey, yeah, everybody calls me." Okay, we're gonna call you something that sounds like that you do not want to be called. That's what's going to happen. That's what should happen. You give yourself a fucking nickname.
I love that when Kaladin tells him like that. He's like, Kaladin felt a chill, strung up, and hung out during High Storm. But then he's like, and Bright Lord Sadeas refused to let him do it, Gaz said. What? Had he misjudged Sadeas? But no, this was part of the act. And Bright Lord Sadeas, Gaz said grimly, told Lamoral to let you keep the soldiers, but to forbid them food or pay while they're unable to work. Said it would show why he's forced to leave Bridgemen behind. The Kremlin, Kaladin muttered, Gaz paled. Hush! It's the High Prince himself you're talking about, boy. Glanced about to see if anyone had heard. There you get a glimpse of the difference between Gaz, the follower, versus Gaz, the guy with too much power, even the limited power that he has. Whereas, like, as soon as Kaladin calls Sadeas a Kremlin, Gaz immediately, like, completely cowers up. Like, dude, shut the fuck up, man.
Well, he does it in a moment, too, when Kaladin runs up on him. He's like,
yeah.
He tries to run off, like, turns all pale and shit. It's fucking hilarious.
So these guys, he should be a follower. It's just you want to have this guy following the right person. Otherwise, he's going to be a piece of crap. So Shallan's an okay person to follow, although she's got her own issues. Dalinar would probably be the best one for Gaz to follow.
Seems like virtually anybody. I mean, he seems to be pretty fair, right?
Gaz needs like somebody, because he's gonna do what he's told, and Dalinar would be the type that if he gave him like some power, like he would also check that power and like make sure that he's using it in the right way. Shallan's more of hands-off approach where he's
get the job done,
just following her example. But yeah, Dalinar might be able to kind of crack the whip and get this guy into becoming a better leader, because he's a terrible one right now.
Yeah, I mean he's kind of cowardice, right? He's kind of a coward, and he's
a piece of shit.
Yeah,
dirtbag. Needs someone checking him. But yeah, and then so Kaladin goes up. He realizes that he's got to find some other way to help the guys. And then when he goes up, I like this part of the description of lives. He's like, stepped up to the men lounging by the barrack. Most were going about the usual bridgeman activity, sprawled on the ground and despondently staring into the air, sitting and despondently staring at the ground, standing and despondently staring into the distance. Bridge 4 wasn't on bridge duty at all this day, and they didn't have work detail until third afternoon bell. But yeah, it's a rough life when, that's what they do, is just sit around completely despondent, staring off into space.
Staring at nothing, yeah.
They've all, like, almost all of them have given up. Kind of got Teft and Rock starting to kind of snap too. Moash is less beaten than the other guys, but yeah, most of them are beaten men. But yeah,
that idea of, you're basically, it's just suffering is the rest of our life. So we just sit here and suffer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't sound as glamorous as you were making it sound earlier.
No,
pretty brutal.
no, it's not glamorous.
But yeah, you know, George said, pity is underrated.
Yeah, pity
pretty
is
good.
Yeah, pity is not bad. You could do worse. But and then when he tells them, he's like, "Look, Sadie isn't gonna let us feed these guys. They're not gonna get paid. So we need to pool our resources together to be able to buy them medicine and to give them food and feed them, keep them alive." And they, like, Moash laughs, like he laughs, and then other guys take up the laughter with Moash, and then when he walks out and kind of blows up Kaladin's plans right there by being a bit of a dick. And then Kaladin's like, you know, what are you going to do if it was you? He's like, I'll die. he's like,
I love
but
he says that without even looking back. He just walks away. He's like, yeah, I'll die out on the field quickly rather than back here over a week's time. Like it's not a solid plan, but I guess
I can't blame him. Like, cause you know, Moash is sitting there. He's thinking from the perspective of what Kaladin's trying to do can't be done. And so all Kaladin is doing is making the end worse and last longer. So he got Moash's perspective of none of these things you want us to do is going to save these people. They're dead.
Well, and
they're walking corpses. They're all going to die. We're all going to die. This is what we do. Our position is to go out and die. So even if you save them, they're going to be put back on the bridge. They're going to get run out there, and they're eventually going to get hit with an arrow, and they're going to die.
Granted, that's the way it's been, right? And he hasn't saved anybody's life necessarily. I mean, he did save a couple guys that are back there, but they're dying, right? Or at least two of them are basically dying. So he doesn't have the antiseptic and all that other shit, right? So actually, the other part of what you're saying also is, you know, they're still hopeless, basically.
Yeah.
So he hasn't turned him around, obviously.
No, which I can understand why not. I mean, it would I wouldn't be quite as pessimistic as Moash. I would be more if I saw Kaladin fighting and be like, oh, fuck it, what else do I got to do? I'll fight with him.
Yeah, that I agree with, but also, you know, what Kaladin could have done all along is just drop the look, Moash, when life gives you lemons, you know? That's all I had to say. It's that powerful.
When life gives you lemons, you eat them reluctantly because they're not very good and they're kind of sour.
Okay. I was going with you make a lemonade stand.
Lemonade. Lemonade's not bad. Yeah, that's better. That's a better idea. That should be a saying.
Yeah, He should. Cal just wearing a t-shirt. He just gets up in the morning, puts his t-shirt on, goes out on his stretch, just lemons. Well, life gives you lemons, guys. Come on, say it with me. You know, and just gets everybody all riled up.
But
lemonade.
Around the back, fudge is made.
Oh man, we just hit a new high with the maturity level. Oh man, that's peak. That's peak maturity level right there.
But yeah, and then Rock comes up to him, and he's like, "I don't have any spears, but I've already spent them. But I'll give him a portion of my food." And he's like, "For that guy." He's like, "But not Leighton. That guy is dead."
Like, oh yeah, I like that he picks the person that gets his food specifically. Yeah.
Don't feed that guy. Don't feed him my food. I'll take that back from you. It's like, that dude's dead. You can't help him. I love that too. He's like, is certain.
Yeah, and I have no pity for man who sits there not doing anything. But for the other one, you may have my food, some of it.
But yeah, and then so he's like, you know, thank you, Rock shrug. You took my place. Without this thing, I would be dead. Kaladin smirked at the logic. I'm not dead, Rock. You'd be fine. Rock shook his head. I'd be dead. It's something strange about you. All men can see it, even if they don't want to speak of this thing. I looked at the bridge where you were. Arrows hit all around you, beside your head, next to your hands, but they weren't hitting you. Which is obviously it's because he was pushing in Stormlight into the thing and drawing the arrows to where he was pushing in the Stormlight where his hands were.
Yeah,
So it was pulling the arrows away from his head. He just didn't know what he was doing.
It's pretty huge, if I remember right, that he points this out. I mean, because we kind of got some impression, but when it's pointed out in the way that Rock's describing, it's like, oh. And it's also being noticed by, at least one guy. He says others, but...
Yeah, when you connect it with the fact that his spears were done after the bridge run, and he's like, what the fuck, man? I just got these.
Yeah.
And
it took me a while to catch on to that, but yeah. I think it was especially when he at the high storm. I think that might have been what clicked it. I don't know. I can't remember now.
I think a lot of it just kind of depends on how fast you go through the books, because if you go through quickly enough, then it's not that far from when what's his face, the man in white, Zeth. Yeah, when Zeth was doing this.
Yeah.
To so Kaladin doing it. And then you can, like, because, I mean, obviously on the reread, you can clearly see he's starting to do what Zeth is doing.
Yeah.
But if you go a while, you can go, weeks or months between the time Zeth was doing this stuff to when Cal's doing it. You might not pick up on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's obviously what he was doing. He's like, look, there's no such thing. Rock glanced at Kaladin's shoulder. Besides this, there is Mafaliki, who always follows you. The large horn eater bowed his head reverently to Syl, then made a strange gesture with his hand, touching his shoulders and then his forehead. Kaladin started, you can see her? He glanced at Syl. As a windspren, she could appear to those she wanted to, and that generally only meant Kaladin. Syl seemed shocked. No, she hadn't appeared to Rock specifically. I am Lehiku, Rock said, shrugging, which means... Rock scowled. Airsick lowlanders. Is there nothing proper you know? But I love that. I love Rock's relationship with Syl, where Syl tries to like play pranks on him and like brings him towards like dung, brings him towards shit, and like tries to prank him, but then he's just constantly trying to find the meaning in what she's doing and like treating her like she's a god, even though she's like sitting there just being like a playful idiot child.
He's great, man. He's a great character because he's always kind of jovial, but he's also very much to the point, which I appreciate, especially in his character and how he sort of comes to the situation.
I like his constant insults. He always like his almost everything he starts off with is like, you idiots, you're so stupid. Airsick lowlanders, basically what he's saying.
Yeah, he's like, pretty much constantly saying, you guys are dumb, you don't know anything.
He says it in such a jovial way when he's like, airsick lowlanders, is there nothing proper you know? Like that's an insult. But it's said in such a jovial, playful way that you just kind of, it just comes off, lovingly. But yeah. Anyway, you are a special man. Bridge 4 had lost eight runners yesterday, counting the 3 wounded. I know, Kaladin said. I broke my first promise. I said I wasn't going to lose a single one. Rock snorted. We are bridgemen. We die. Is how this thing works. You might as well promise to make the moons catch each other. That's a terrible thing to say to Kaladin. Because that is a guy that will try to make the moons catch each other. And he will figure out a way to do it. He will completely throw the planet off the orbit. He will rope one moon, pull it into another.
Yeah, he basically, wait, what'd you say? Moons catch each other?
Challenge
that's my new thing.
Accepted. That wasn't a challenge. Challenge accepted.
Then the next day he's going out. Yeah. He's going to like where they had the bridges, and he's getting ropes. He's going up at night, like measuring.
He's like, constantly like working on his lasso, like throwing it up at the sky. It's like, there's no way you'll be able to do this, man.
We talked about this. He needs to talk to George Bailey.
George Bailey? Oh, yeah.
Wonderful Life.
George, pulling the moon. Yeah.
He lassos the moon.
Don't do it! What are you doing, Cal? You gotta stop.
He causes the death of massive amounts of human beings on Earth by pulling the moon.
This is your fault, Rock. You said I couldn't do it.
Well, the funny thing is, George did it for romance, even though Mary was like, "No, you're gonna kill us all." But he was doing it anyway. Mary, you said you wanted it. But for Rock, yeah, all you had to do was challenge Kaladin, and apparently Kaladin's like, "What? Impossible task? Dude, that's my thing."
Yeah, and Rox lets him know, like, of the other crews that were fired on, they lost the least amount, and which
It's
he's like, Bridge 4 never loses the least amount.
it sounds like this was one of the worst bridge runs too.
Yeah.
Like it was just a particularly bad one.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's the number of men, like 2 lost 11 men. It wasn't even a focus of the firing. But
5 of them lost over 20.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of people died in that, and they only lost 8. But that's part of why some of these other crews are giving them the stink eye, because there is that tribal nature of man, to where it's us versus them, or this is our crew. We're Bridge 3, they're Bridge 4. And you start viewing Bridge 4, that's the unlucky one. They're the worst. At least we're better than them. And then when Bridge 4 is all of a sudden doing better than you, and then it takes a shot at your limited ego that you have at that point.
Yeah, it's that kind of gets pointed out. It sounds like sort of what's happening is Kaladin sort of messing with their ecosystem, you know.
Yeah.
The expectation is that others can at least look down on Bridge 4. And now if that gets out of whack, yeah, that fucks up, even the little amount of esteem they had for themselves.
Yeah. I mean, there's a large part of that psychology built into how he describes the world, and like, the soldiers looking at the Parshendi as a bunch just of animals. They're mindless. They're not
others,
real
yeah.
people. And, they view the things in the way that helps them get by, helps them do what they need to do, helps them slaughter a shit ton of people over 6 years. A lot of people, a lot of killing. And so killing that many people, your probably mind is going to need to cope with it. Because if you're just viewing it as we're just killing innocent people, or we're killing people that are just like us, it's going to be much harder to do. You gotta make the bad guys into just pure evil. They're not real humans. They're not real people. So mind has ways to cope. And so this is also one of those things. And Sanderson does a good job of the characters have a lot of coping mechanisms that are realistic, not necessarily healthy, but realistic.
Well, I mean, they're not. That's some of the nastiest things you can think about that experienced in World War II. You think about like the Nazis and how they basically had to, through propaganda of periods of many years, turn people's minds into just vilifying the others.
Yeah,
and it's not just Nazis, man. It's every culture does the shit. The Hun or whatever, they just label them with some big label, and it's like they're not us. They're evil.
Yeah.
Right. Is that idea too is so. It's so. I mean, it's very much possible. It's possible when you have radio and newspaper, and that's all your technology. You don't see those people. You don't imagine how they live. You have no. They're others, right? Today, that's a little bit of a harder sell. To picture people elsewhere just evil, like that's what they do. They sit in a room, just think evil thoughts, and they're all just they got the Inspector Gadget villain with his metal hand petting a cat, and he's just villainous all the time.
That's how the mind works, though. Gotta have coping mechanisms if you're gonna do some awful shit, because otherwise it's gonna break you.
Well, I was gonna say, most people, they're not doing this because they chose to do it.
Yeah,
they're doing it because somebody's pointing them in that direction. Be like, you're a killing machine, right? Right,
yeah.
Right. Yes, go. Those are them. Go get them. Drop shit.
But I like that aspect of it, that he includes that stuff in there, because that is how, human nature works. But then,
yeah, I mean, I brought it up because it's realistic to humankind. It's just it's nastiness.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Rather not think about.
Yeah, 100%. But then Kaladin comes up with a plan, and so he goes up to Gaz, and he's like, put us on stone gathering detail. And he's like, stone gathering was one of the least desirable work details, and involved traveling outside of the camp and filling wagons with large rocks. Soulcasters fed the army by turning rocks into grain, and it was easier for them, for reasons only they knew, if they had distinct separate stones. So men gathered rocks. It was menial, sweaty, tiring, mindless work, perfect for bridgemen. Not sure exactly why they would, it's easier to turn individual rocks into grain than it would be to like turn one big rock into grain. It's something that I'm interested in exploring more, is like, because I understand more the magic systems on some of the other things are easier to comprehend. Soul casting's a bit unique, and like you've seen, like when Shallan is like trying to coax the stick into becoming fire, he's got to like convince the stick to become fire, and it's a weird process. So that's something I'm as we go through these that I want to become more understand better, is exactly how like the Shallan's magic of being when she's in Shadesmar, changing things from one thing to another, how that soul casting process works, because I don't understand it extremely well right now. It's I know what they say in the books, but I haven't. It's not clicked in my head exactly how it's working. So I don't know 100% why it would be easier for like smaller rocks to make into grain than just one big rock to make into a bunch of pieces of grain. Is it because it's easier to convince each individual pebble into becoming each individual grain than for one rock to become a bunch of different things? Like I'm not sure exactly what
Yeah,
the reasoning is.
I wonder if it's like a large rock is so many more minerals and elements that have to be convinced. I don't know. I'm still at the
Maybe
point
it's
of
easier because
basically
like once a rock
acceptance.
has been broken into something else, like it was a bigger rock and now it's a bunch of smaller rocks, maybe it's easier to convince it once it's already
Oh,
been become
that's
something
interesting.
else to become something else again. I don't know
Because it's
exactly what the
happened. Yeah,
process is,
that's
but
kind of
that's something I
interesting.
want to explore more as we go. But then, yeah, then, I'll do it. Kaladin said, grimacing, just this once. Look, guys, I don't want to spend the rest of my time here fighting against you. Your men are going to be angry. I won't let them think it was me who did this to them. I'll tell them it was my idea. And then, Rock's like, little man's right, which I would have been like,
Uh,
if I was Rock, like, he's right, because I'm not real cool with what you're doing to me right now.
I mean, I love how he just plays Gaz, right? Just completely plays him to get them to be able to do something that he wants to do.
But it's to his benefit too. Makes Gaz look good, so it's not even really
But
playing him. It's
he's
everybody's benefit. The other crew doesn't have to do it. Gaz gets to look like the fucking hero with that crew. Kaladin's taking the blame for the other crew. It's only person
I mean,
who's
it's a win-win, yeah,
only person
win-win-win.
taking a negative is Kaladin, pissing off people in his crew. But the benefit is he gets to be able to get medicine for him.
But he gets to do what he's been doing, which is annoy these guys and
Yeah,
make them dislike him. So he gets to push them further in that direction. Hey, you
yeah,
know how I asked you guys to give me stuff, and you were like, "Fuck you." Well, now we're all gonna do stuff you don't want to do.
yeah.
So
Guess what? I
you're
volunteered you guys
welcome.
for harder work. Oh, you're welcome.
High fives all around. Let's do it. Let's
But
go
yeah,
get
so
this shit.
he's like, we got to get another man, and he goes up to Teft. It's like his beard was stained by the curry, and he regarded Kaladin with wary eyes before wiping his mouth on his sleeve. I like my food, son, he said. Hardly think they feed me enough for one man, let alone two. I need you, Teft, Kaladin said. Not your food, your loyalty, your allegiance. But I like that. It's like as soon as he comes up, Teft's like, nah, you stop right there. I'm not giving you any of this food. All mine.
Yeah, I definitely respect that. I mean,
Like, in
especially, I
fact,
mean,
if you're passing out food, why don't you go collect some for me? Because I
yeah.
could eat a little more. I'm still a little hungry.
When I mean, especially gets pointed out when Kaladin's first thinking about, all right, what options do I have here? He's like, dude, I can't skimp. I can skip a little bit, but I can't do this work, with less food. Like I need it. Like the body literally needs, some fucking nourishment to be able to have fuel to fucking run this shit. But
Yeah, I like the way he builds this kind of build up for Bridge 4. The reason this works so well is it's such a slow it's a slow burn in that it's developed very well. It's not a slow burn in that I find it boring, like any of these chapters boring or anything. I find them entertaining to read. I like the development. I like that it gives the characters a chance to develop and the relationships to be earned, and it's not just like,
Yeah.
oh well, Kaladin did this thing and everybody's nips were blown off and now everybody's following him. Like he had to.
It's
So
vital.
it's a painstaking process for him to earn their respect.
It's vital for us. It'd be vital for me that he earns it. If it's given freely, man, especially in the circumstances they're in, like
Mm,
you can't. That's, I mean, talk about cheating and not earning
yeah,
it. If you just, like you said, blow their nips off, you're not blowing nips off some fucking guys that are suffering every day and from beginning to end, man. Like
yeah.
they're
He
not
gets them where
impressed.
they start paying attention to him, and then he gets a couple of them, and then he gets a couple more, and then he starts
Yeah.
feeding them, and yeah, and then they can't help but deny it. I like
Well,
the
and
fact that
what's
it's like gets to a point where it's just like you can't help but deny that this dude is the dude to follow.
Well, and what's so important as well is you convince one. That's key, man. You get one and two. You get one or two. Now you're fucking rolling because nobody wants to be that first one. And how did he get the first one? He made a huge sacrifice. Right? He
Yeah.
put himself. He basically, yeah. I think Rock is right. Obviously, he would have died, so he saved his life.
Mm,
So you just keep saving people's lives, man.
yeah.
Like you talk
Yeah.
about, like the one of the most difficult ways to endear someone to you is, save their fucking life. He's in those situations. So, and again, man, this is the real one of the real, like, plush, real awesome circumstances of being in this situation. There's all these life or death circumstances that he gets thrown into. He gets to save people's lives, bro. You don't get
Yeah.
that in some cushy job, working
No.
for Amaram,
No. So
So,
again,
big
thank
favor.
Amaram.
Yeah.
One of the benefits, and at least give him a couple of high fives for that, at least.
So that's on the back. So Bridge 4, they really should have just went with t-shirts on the front, lemons on the back.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amaram.
Yeah.
Boom. Little reminders. Right? This is what
So,
Kaladin
hey,
needs.
Amaram's like, how many lives did you save? Like, high five for each one of them. All me.
I did that.
Yeah.
I did that.
You know what? Would those men be alive if I didn't put you in this situation? Would they? No, they'd be dead. They'd be dead. So all their lives, me. I did that.
High five. Give it to me. Give it to me.
But yeah, and that's the way you should think about the story, and that's why you should love Amaram and everything he's done, because Rock and Teft and Moash and all these guys would be dead without him and what he did.
Bridge 4, the Bridge 4 greatness wouldn't exist.
Yeah. So really, the hero of the story is Amaram.
It's a solid point.
But yeah, and so Teft, Kaladin began. I've given my loyalty before, the man said, too many times now. Always works out the same. Your trust gets betrayed. Kaladin asked softly. Teft snorted. Storms know. I betray it. You can't depend on me, son. I belong here as a bridgeman. I like that aspect of him.
Yeah,
because
he's
it's
willing
not
to sit in
it's
his own
not
punishment.
well, it's good that they have a guy in there that he's not like, people have been screwing me over. He's like, I'm the fuck up. It's like, I deserve this, man. I keep fucking up.
Yeah, it's refreshing to come across that, because the expectation is like, this is bullshit. I don't deserve to be here. I didn't do anything, or what I did do was justified. I mean, that's the old story. You get that all the time.
It's kind of reminds you of like Red from Shawshank.
Yep. That's exactly what came to mind. Yeah.
Yep.
Only guilty man in Shawshank.
Yeah. Which it's refreshing when you get a guy in there that is like that. Who, I mean, obviously what's happening to him is not justified. It's not I don't care what he did. What they're doing to him it's not justified. But it's refreshing that he's not just like, everybody else is to blame for my circumstances. He takes on the blame for the bad decisions he's made, even though the consequences for them are not justified. But yeah, and he's like, Kaladin's like, I depended on you yesterday and you impressed me. Fluke. I'll judge that, Kaladin said. Teft, we're all broken one way or another. Otherwise we wouldn't be bridgemen. I failed. My own brother died because of me. So why keep caring? It's either that or give up and die. And if death is better, it came back to this problem. This was why the bridgeman didn't care if he helped the wounded or not. And he's like, death isn't better, Kaladin said, looking Teft in the eyes. Oh, it's easy to say that now, but when you stand on the ledge and look down into that dark, endless pit, you change your mind. Just like Haber did, just like I've done. He hesitated, seeing something in the older man's eyes. I think you've seen it too. Aye, Teft said softly. Aye, I have. So are you with us in this thing? Rock said, squatting down. Us, Kaladin thought, smiling faintly. But I like that that's where it's like earned. The way it's just kind of the slow process where he's got Rock on his side, and then Rock starts helping him recruit Teft, and then through Teft and Rock, they start bringing the other guys in.
Yeah, yeah. It's and again, I mean, if I remember right, Rock was the first that one. I might be misremembering this, but he was one of the first ones that was like, dude, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Like when Kaladin was first trying to, it was Rock, it was Teft, and it was Moash. Those are like the first three that are like, dude, shut your fucking mouth.
Rock was betting that like the plank he was carrying was light and shit like that. Yeah.
Like it was hollow or something. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, they're the most reluctant, and then they're the gradually become like his biggest supporters.
Yeah.
You know. So, and that's what I was saying a minute ago. I mean, you sell one or two, that turns the rest. And that's kind of how our world works as well. A few people start to turn in one direction, and then everybody else is like, wait a second. If no one's turning, nobody turns, right? Pretty much.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of how people are.
I love Teft. Like Teft's, as far as like Bridge 4, he's one of my favorite. With I get to keep my food. Yes, Kaladin said. So, all right then, I guess. Can't be any harder than sitting here and having a staring contest with mortality. It's like a fucking great way to describe what he's doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I like that him and Rock shake hands and introduce themselves. It's like, Rock. Teft looked at him, finished shaking Kaladin's hands, then shook Rock's. I'm Teft. And it's like, Stormfather, Kaladin thought. I'd forgotten that most of them don't even bother to learn each other's names. It's tough life. Tough life. Everybody, I mean, like, pretty much everybody that is in the crew now is in Bridge 4 was not there when Kaladin got there. Every single person that was in the crew when he got there is dead.
Yeah, that's wild, man, to consider. And that's a big part of the reason why it is relevant to bring up the question that you brought up, that Dalinar is bringing up, is like, dude, you can't just keep going through people like this. There's not that many. Like at a war camp, like what are we doing here, man? Like eventually you got to run out of bodies, of able bodies to carry this shit.
Yeah, especially in a position that far down, like where it's just it's a suicide mission you're just torturing them while you're doing it. Like it just seems like it'd be hard to keep restocking that. Like you think you'd just be dealing with revolts constantly.
Well, that's what eventually would come up. Like you mentioned, if eventually you're having to put people in there and like on trumped up charges, then you're going to start getting bigger problems.
Yeah.
Then you're talking mutiny and shit.
Surprisingly, they let these guys walk around and stuff. Like you would think that wouldn't be an option with how horrible their lives are. You would think they'd have to keep these guys chained up when they're not working, because otherwise they might start plotting and coming up with ways to kill the masters, because the masters keep torturing the shit out of them and sending them out to die.
Yeah, I mean, or just like what Teft had mentioned, having a staring contest with mortality. If that's really what you're doing, eventually it's like, dude, I might as well just go out in a blaze.
Yeah,
let's just go nuts, man.
My life's gonna be torture. Like, what you can't threaten me with torture. My life is torture. Yeah. It's like, so your torture is gonna be worse. Like, it's still torture. Like I'm still already getting tortured.
At least, well, and that's the biggest reason why you'd be like, all right, I'm just going to go out on my terms, and like I said, go out on a blaze and just try to either kill the guy you hate the most, or just do some wildness. There'd be some super wild shit going on. You know, when you talk about madness, people doing inappropriate things. I mean, imagine a circumstance like this. They just choose the craziest thing you can do. If you're going to be killed, it's like, all right, what's the craziest thing I can do?
And then we get, what kind of name is Rock? Teft asked, releasing the hand. It's a stupid one, Rock said with an even face. But at least it has meaning. Does your name mean anything? Guess not, Tef said, rubbing his bearded chin. Rock, this is not my real name, the Horn-Eater admitted. It's just what the lowlanders can pronounce. What's your real name then? And I'll let you take it up from there.
Numuhuku Makiaki Ayala Lunamore.
Yeah, there you go. I call him Luna.
Oh, really? You picked Luna, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
I like Numuhukamaka Hakiyaka. That's where I go with.
Yeah. And then, Rock said. Tef hesitated, then smiled. Well, I guess in that case, Rock will do just fine. Rock laughed, settling down. Our bridge leaner has a plan. Something glorious and daring. Has something to do with spending our afternoon moving stones in the heat. Kaladin smiled, leaning forward. We need to gather a certain kind of plant. A reed that grows in small patches outside the camp. Can't remember if the first time I read this, if I realized like he was going to go and collect the milkweed sap or not. But that's obviously what he's going to do.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I was kind of thinking something similar, or sort of the similar thing because it's obvious. And he keeps bringing up the apothecary. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's so much that is somewhat unpredictable about the story, even this far in, because still kind of getting to know the lay of the land. That I don't know. A lot of times I'm just in a mode of acceptance when it's something I haven't read before and it's a completely different world, in circumstances. It puts that.
The first time I go through things, I don't spend a lot of time analyzing. I save that for the rereads because I try to go through in big chunks so that I'm just constantly moving the train forward. And so like I knocked this book out pretty quickly. And so if it doesn't occur to me as I'm reading it right away, I'm not like stopping and thinking about it. I just keep going.
Well, it is also the type of thing that, I mean, it happens. It's so funny, like with my wife. And my kids do the same thing where they always ask that question the same moment you think it. Well, what's that about? I'm like, I don't know. Just like you don't know. But we're both going to find out.
Yeah.
Like, stay tuned. Stay tuned. We're all going to find out. Like and it's funny when it gets verbalized because you're like, well, that was the intention. They wanted to plant that question in your mind and it was successful. I don't know either. But I'm going to find out. And it is kind of fun at times to like break it down and kind of discuss it or even think it out. And you do it on a subconscious level regardless, right?
You see this in fantasy. Like there's always a segment of people that read the books and their immediate like comment will be like, well, this book just introduced like 4 different characters. I don't know any of them. And I don't understand the world. And it's like they've read like 3 chapters of a fantasy book. And it's like, why would you expect to know all these people and to know the world and everything? You just started the story.
Yeah, that's a really
like what
approach.
do you want? Like what? Like the alternative, the only way for you to have a grasp of all this stuff is if they just go like, Chapter 1. Okay, so I'm going to discuss like 4 or 5 characters. Here's their names. Here's their backstory. Here's all about them. This is the world. I'm going to describe. Here's all the pertinent details that you need to know. Yeah.
Here's the history. Here's the mythology. I'm not going to give it to you in story form because, we know you don't want that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really,
it's like a completely unrealistic expectations.
Why do you read fantasy?
Yeah.
Well, for me, there's that's a big part of the reason why I was reluctant for so many years to even read fantasy because I knew going in, or at least I had an expectation in my mind that going in, I'm going to have this upload that I'm going to have to do, and there's a reason to be reluctant with that upload, and they're verbalizing it, but to then come out and say it in that way, it's like, well, then why are you a fan of fantasy? Why are you reading this genre? Read something else. And even that is going to have its own upload. So good luck reading stuff. Like, shit, man. I don't know what to tell you. Like, there's an element of surprise. It's like,
I don't know.
Enjoyable.
The last book I just finished it, and I know all about those characters. And now I started a new book, and I don't know anything about them. It's like, yeah. That's how this shit works, man. There's a beginning, and then by the time you get to the end, if they did a good job, then you know what the fuck is going on. But that's part of the reason I like rereads, is because the beginning of books, you go through and you don't know what the hell's going on. And when you go back through the second time, then it's like, okay, now I get it. Now I've already experienced everything. I got a good enough knowledge base where now that I'm going through this the second time, I'm not caught off guard by anything. So I start picking out new details. Even third time or fourth time you go through a book, you start picking out more and more details depending on how intricate the plot is and how big the world is. You can keep going through books so many times and picking out new things.
Yeah, I mean, this is some of the most enjoyable things about reading. But first time through certain things, you get that shock effect, that new experience sort of effect that sticks with you. There's certain things I've read stick with me for life. Like I'll never forget that experience the first time reading it through. And what's so funny about it, man, reading it again, like I just reread something. I mean, this was like many months ago, but I reread something that I hadn't read a very long time. So vastly different than how my memory conceived of this book. I mean, it was so vastly different. It did not at all maintain the same visual elements that I remembered. Completely fucking different. Where I was like, where was I at in life at that point? Where I'm starting to like question it. But I was probably a decade plus apart in the reads. So that's big, right? I mean,
yeah, you're a different person 10 years later.
Yeah, completely. Especially in the last 10 years for me. But I mean that's what's so enjoyable.
Yeah, we've all been meaning to talk to you about that.
and that's what's so enjoyable. I mean, especially about and I'm just doing this the first time with Sanderson with this book, and I haven't read the other ones, but like Rothfuss especially. I mean, dude, it's like one of the best examples of rereads I've ever had. Some of the other books that I've reread that I like so much, man, you get to like pick up on like how they did it, how they pieced it together, which you didn't think about, like you described. I don't really think about it so much. I don't let it slow down my progression. I do stop and take notes a lot of times when I get like a wow factor with certain things. But also, if the intention is to read something in particular that I'm going to utilize for something, then yeah, I do take it a little bit slower. But it's nice to be able to go through, especially fiction, which would be a different experience than like an autobiography or something, where you go back through and you get to see how they got to where you ended up.
Yeah,
the
I don't.
Structure.
When I go through the first time, I don't think about like the implications, what things might go, where things might go, and those kind of things. I just kind of reading the story, not trying to solve any puzzles. The only time I'll go back is if I get lost, or like I'm like, wait, I didn't fully get that kind of thing, where like I'll reread something if it didn't sink in the first time. But I'm not like, if something doesn't click right away, then I don't like sit there and take a break and try to puzzle things out and that kind of shit. I say that for when I'm rereading stories.
Now, what you just described, I'll do quite a bit where I'll go back 3, maybe 5 pages, usually like 2 or 3, a lot of times. And I started to get a knack to where I actually found it kind of effective to where for the longest time, I would finish a chapter, then I'd put it down, right? I'd read to the end of the chapter. But then I started to kind of realize that if I left like the last 2 pages of a chapter, it made it easier for me to pick up where I left off, right? Because you're still moving through that chapter, those chapters with that momentum. The new chapter a lot of times is a new setting. You're in a new room. You're in a new situation. So you're kind of picking back up. Then
I always do that anyways. Like once I stop reading, when I go back and or like if I'm listening to it, I'll just rewind like 2 minutes and get like, how did that chapter end? Yeah. And then I'll get the end of it, and then I'll be like, okay, now I know where I'm at again. Like, I need that reminder.
It's a lot easier on Audible, which I'm still kind of it's still kind of new to me. I've used it in ways in the past completely differently than the way I use it now. But yeah, it's really helpful to have it, have it adaptable or reachable like that, where you just fucking pick where you play it. I mean, it's tremendous. It's a tremendous tool.
But yeah, so what do we got next week? We got a Dalinar chapter. Oh, we're gonna get Navani. So we get the Dalinar meeting, well, not meeting Navani, but we get introduced to Navani as she gets back to the camp. Just get a little chapter, and Wit fucking just cutting down everybody that's walking up.
Really? Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody's walking up. He's just tossing out insult after insult after insult. Just rapid fire insults. Yeah.
Nice. Right on. Cool.
But yeah, so we will be jumping to that in 2 weeks, and we'll wrap it up there, and shove that down your face.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Shove it in your ears.
So yeah, shove it down your earballs and your face balls.
Face balls.
All right. Peace out.
Yeah.